I'd like to call the Planning Commission to order for September 28th meeting. I'm Kevin Jeffries, Chairman of the Planning Commission. Folks, before we get started this morning, just a couple of announcements. Commissioners, been on the commission for a while, just wanted to announce that Joyce Albertson passed away here last week, and she's been living in Texas with her children, and so we're going to bring her back to LaGrange, and I think October 16th will be the visitation. So just wanted to I think Amy sent a note out to everyone the last couple of days. We just wanted to let everybody know that she did pass away. So, and also that Wendy Hagan, the appointee from Pee Wee Valley, is resigned. She's got her business has really gotten busy, and so we'll be having to wait until Pee Wee makes another appointment to the commission. I just wanted to let everybody know that she did resign here the last couple of days. And with that, I guess the next thing is let's get all the staff sworn in, please. Thank you.
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
All right. And then, Commissioners, we're now down to, let's take a look at our approval of our minutes from our August 24th meeting. And I'd like to get a motion to approve those in a second, and then we'll open it up for additions or corrections. Okay, Mr. Hampton? Okay, he moves to approval. We have a second? Okay, a second? Well, all right, any additions or corrections we need to make to the August 24th meeting minutes? Ms. Jones? Ms. Jones?
On page 2 of 6 at the beginning, just site history was listed twice.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Beginning of page 2, site histories in the list twice.
Oh, okay, I see that.
I have.
Any other additions or corrections? Okay, see none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from our August 24th meeting, if that wanted correction, signify by saying aye. Who was no? Minutes from our August 24th meeting have been approved. All right, Ms. Haichu, I think we're ready to start with our first public hearing. And if you would, read the docket, please.
Docket PZ-21-017. Application has been filed by Kevin Danielson for the approval of a zoning map amendment on approximately 0.301 acres. The property is located at 211 North First Avenue, LaGrange. The changes from R to A residential and C in commercial neighborhood.
Thank you. Sally, I assume we'll be introducing the docket.
Good morning, Amy Alley with Oldham County Planning and Development Services. Excuse me, as Ms. Haichu stated, this is an application for a zoning map amendment and development plan. The property is located at 211 North First Avenue in LaGrange. It's approximately 0.301 acres. The existing zoning is R2A residential, and the proposed zoning is CN commercial neighborhood. This is an aerial view of the property. It's right across the street from this building. This is just a zoomed in version. You'll see that East Madison Street is to the north and South Highway 53 or North First Avenue is to the west. This is the existing zoning. You'll see the subject parcel here again is zoned R2A. The property to the north is C1 in the blue. The property to the south is CN commercial neighborhood. And then the brown areas again are R2A. There is no previous site history regarding this property. Again, the applicant is requesting a zoning change from R2A residential to CN commercial neighborhood. The purpose of the CN commercial neighborhood district is to promote the reuse of structures located in urban areas of Oldham County that have been constructed for mixed commercial use and residential uses, which may be currently underused or vacant. and which are located at street corners or on blocks with significant number of retail businesses. Currently, the property is used as single-family home. It's approximately 1,942 square feet, and the applicant is proposing to convert the property into a professional office for his home builder / remodeler business. The plan shows the entrance into the parking area from East Madison Street with 7 parking spaces. The plan also provides the required landscape buffering for the parking area, and they will be required to submit a landscape plan for review and approval by staff. The proposed plan meets all other zoning requirements such as lot coverage, impervious surface, and parking requirements, and is not requesting any variances or waivers. So this is the development plan that was submitted with the application. You'll have a copy of this in your packet. And then this is just one that's marked up a little bit. You'll see here, again, East Madison Street to the north, North First Avenue or North Highway 53 to the west. The existing building is outlined here in blue. Shows the proposed parking area, and then this is the required vehicle use landscape buffer areas in green. And this is an alley on the west side. The zoning change does comply with the future land use map, which shows the property's future predicted use as commercial. According to the applicant's justification statement, the proposed use is an appropriate use for the property, and based upon the changes in the area, the existing zoning classification is inappropriate, and there have been major changes in the area that have altered the basic character of the area. This is a picture of the existing home that is located at 211 North First Avenue. You'll see the zoning change sign there. This is the property to the west, which is the Christian church. This is the north view. So this is a duplex across the street from the subject property on East Madison. And these are some other single-family homes that are along East Madison. This is the south adjoining property. This is the Tice Law Office. There's a site map in the bottom right corner of your screen. This is the east view, so this is the alley, and this subject garage is also located on the applicant's property as well. But this is the east view, which runs along the alley. And this is just an east view looking at the corner from East Madison and North First Avenue, so you can see there is some on-street parking. This is the proposed parking layout. This is obviously not to scale. I'm not an engineer, but this kind of gives you an overview of where the parking area will be. So this is the side and rear yard. This is the rear of the existing single-family structure. So in summary, the applicant is requesting approval of a zoning map amendment on approximately 0.301 acres from R2A residential to CN commercial neighborhood. This would be a recommendation of approval or denial to the city of LaGrange. And the applicant is also requesting approval of a development plan for a home builder / remodeler office on approximately 0.301 acres. The proposed binding elements that will follow with the development plan is that there shall be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineers Office. Number 2, the applicant is required to submit a landscape plan for review and approval by staff. And number 3, the preliminary plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinance and requirements at the time of approval. That is all that I have.
Thank you. And I forgot to mention before we started, if anybody has a cell phone with them, be sure to turn it off and turn it on vibrate so that it doesn't interfere with the courtroom here today. So, Mr. Sellerman, do you have anything you need to add to this docket? County engineer?
I'm Sellerman, County Engineer. Good morning. This project, we reviewed it for the TRC, and a handful of comments we made were addressed. The last few comments we had is just as you can see, there doesn't appear to be any work being planned in the North First Avenue, the state right-of-way. If there were changes to involve that, they would need to coordinate with the state to work in the right-of-way. With regard to the work to be completed at Madison Street, they will need to coordinate with LaGrange City Director of Public Works in order to get an encroachment permit. As far as the construction plans, it's obviously less than 1 acre of disturbance, so there's no need for the stormwater quality management and erosion control plan to be submitted to our office. However, We do require the construction plans be submitted for review, and we've noted that for the construction plan review, there are a few items that need to be addressed, just some elevations for the drainage changes to be noted on that are within the East Madison Street right away, and the culvert that's being approved. So that's all.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioners, open it up for any questions for the presenters here, for the staff. Before we do, just want to make sure that when you're speaking, be sure to pull the mic towards you and make sure that the red light is on, because it's sometimes it's a little hard to hear even with the microphone. So just make sure that it's as close to you as you can get. So is there any questions for staff on this docket? Okay, seeing no hands go up, we'll move on then to the presentation by the applicant or representatives and others in support of the application. Mr. Baxter, I would assume that's you, and as always,
thank you. Barry Baxter. I am representing the applicant. My address is 117 West Main Street here in LaGrange. The applicant is Mr. Danielson, who is seated here. Our engineer is Ms. Talbot. If I can get them sworn, just in case you have any questions. Then we can distinguish them.
cite you.
I'm going to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all. Amy, I appreciate your work this morning. Normally I come with a PowerPoint presentation, but after I reviewed the staff presentation, I didn't want to belabor this too much if I could help it, and I wanted to move through this as quickly as possible. We have a vacant structure that is located within a stone's throw of where we are sitting right now. Mr. Danielson is proposing to repurpose that structure to operate a remodeling business out of the building. He will use the existing residence as his office. The existing frame garage will be used to store some materials, but there will not be any on-site outside storage of any construction materials, anything like that. And there will be, he may have a work van parked in his driveway there, but he is not going to have, for example, aluminum siding or lumber or whatever laying on the ground outside the building. That is not the purpose of this at all. It is to be a professional office that he can use to meet with people when he's proposing work to them, so they can come in and talk about plans and things like that. This location is an ideal location for this. As you all are aware, it is zoned residential, and oddly enough, a lot of the site where we are right now, the parking area, for example, here is zoned residential. The church property behind us is zoned residential. The properties across East Madison, while they are residential, are zoned commercial. The property diagonally across from us is zoned commercial, and the property immediately adjacent to us is zoned, I think CN, although I couldn't tell from the staff report if it's the old O designation, but in any event, I mean, it is their commercial uses for it. So this particular property is a good location for what we're proposing to have done. I pulled out, just for my information, the GIS map. Tasha, can I get you to put that? There we go. So this is from from the GIS map that the county has, and you will see our property is property 211 in this location. The properties immediately to the south, this is the Tice Law Office, and there's a couple other professional offices here in the CN zone. 214, this is the church property. This is the fiscal court building located here. Obviously, your parking area and everything is zoned R2. This is zoned commercial. This is commercial, although they are, I think, rental properties over there. They are all three of those properties are owned by landlords that do not live in the property. So from our perspective, this just continues everything that is common to the area, and we think this is an appropriate use of this particular piece of property. I don't really have much else to say besides what Amy said. I do have a proposed motion, Mr. Chairman, that I would distribute to the members of the commission with your permission. But I don't want to belabor this. I don't think this is a complicated project. I I think this is an appropriate use of the property. Obviously, there have been changes in the area with the other professional offices right along in this line, and rezoning this property fits with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. So we're just asking you to rezone the property. Thank you.
If you want to distribute those, yes. All right, is there anyone else here that would like to speak in support of this application? Anyone here that would like to speak in support of it? Okay. Seeing nobody stand up here, we'll move into testimony and questions by those opposing the application. Is there anyone here that has questions or is opposed to this application? Okay. Seeing none, we'll now open it up for questioning of the applicant by the commission. Commissioners, any questions for this applicant on this docket? Yes, sir.
Sir, I'm not sure if you're aware. Do you know if 203 or was it 205 that recently was changed also to CN? Is it? Which one?
03 is the parking lot that physical court owns. That was not changed, but the next one, 05 and 07, I think.
I thought so. Thank you. Okay.
05 was the dentist's office, right? And so it was a professional office for a long time, but I don't think the zoning was appropriate. But the dentist went in there. I don't know about 07.
Okay. Mr. Douglas, anything else? Okay. Any additional questions for this applicant? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Baxter, do you have a final statement, sir?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, with that, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. All right, just wanted to get into the record that there was a protest petition that was filed on this particular docket. We will file that for the record. Sorry.
That petition was brought in prior to the neighborhood meeting and the technical review committee meeting. It wasn't part of the planning commission submittal, but I put it in with the technical review committee comments.
So we do need to file it with as part of the record, or?
Well, it is part of the record because it was part of what was submitted today, but it wasn't submitted with the planning commission application.
Okay.
There has not been any other opposition since the neighborhood meeting or the technical review. That was submitted prior to those two meetings. So once the applicant spoke with myself and the applicant, they understood the project.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. With that, docket PZ 21017 and PZ 21018 are now closed. And as always, I'll call on Mr. Urban to outline. We'll do the zoning map amendment request first. And Mr. Urban, if you want to outline that, please.
This is a zoning map amendment and a recommendation to the city of LaGrange. You have been given potential motions from the applicant and also justification that's in the packet. And again, this is a recommendation for either approval or denial of the zoning map amendment, and there are no conditions or issues based on top of that. So,
okay. Mr. Carter, anything you need to add, sir? Okay. All right, commissioners. With that, this will be a zoning map amendment request that will be going to the city of LaGrange for 0.301 acres to change the zoning from R2A residential district to CN commercial neighborhood district. So, commissioners, with that, the chair would now entertain a motion on this proposed zoning map amendment request. Yes, sir.
Regarding docket PZ-21-017, I would make a motion to recommend approval to the city of LaGrange of the zoning map amendment because it complies with the proposed future land use objectives of the comprehensive plan, in that the comprehensive plan anticipated this land use to be commercial, and additionally is consistent with the zoning classifications of the adjacent properties.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Carter, is that adequate? Okay, do we have a second? Ms. Davis seconds. All right, now any discussion on the motion of a recommendation to the city of LaGrange for a zoning map amendment, docket PZ 21017. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Hachu, if you would, let's do the vote.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss? Mr. King? Mr. Hampton? Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Falvey? Mr. Elder? Ms. Davis?
All right, the motion to approve the zoning map amendment request that will go to the city of LaGrange has been approved on a vote of 11-0. Mr. Urban, I'll ask you now on the docket PZ 21018, which is the approval of the development plan on this.
So since you're recommending approval to the city of LaGrange, your next decision is to consider the preliminary development plan. There are motions for both approval and denial. If you choose to make a motion to approve, there are three proposed binding elements. The first is that there shall be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineer's Office. Number two is that the applicant is required to submit a landscape plan for review and approval by staff. And just for your note, that's usually done during the construction phase. Then number three is that the preliminary plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements at the time of approval, and no building permit shall be approved until all standards are satisfied.
Okay. Commissioners, you heard the outline of what's being requested on docket PZ 21018 on the development plan. Do we have a motion on this docket? Have a motion. Ms. Jones?
I'll make the motion for approval of the PZ 21018 for the preliminary development plan because it complies with the objectives of the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance, and subdivision regulations, and is also an appropriate repurposing of the property and with the adherence to the binding elements that were presented.
Mr. Carter, is that adequate, sir?
Yes.
Binding elements, correct? Yes. Yes. Okay. Do we have a second? Who seconded? Oh, Mr. Falvey. Okay. All right. Any discussion now on the motion to approve the development plan on docket PZ 21018? Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, if you would, let's take a vote on this, please.
Ms.
This is a
Davis?
motion to approve.
Davis? Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Falvey? Mr. Finney? Mr. Hampton? Mr. King? Mr. Klingenfuss? Ms. Nasser? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
The motion to approve the development plan request on docket PZ 21018 has been approved on a vote of 11-0. And before I ask Ms. Haichu to read the next docket, I just wanted to announce that one of our docketed items has been deferred to October. The docket PZ 21020, which is Brighton Heights in Peewee Valley, will not be heard today. That will be heard in October. So I just want to make everyone aware of that in case somebody was here for that particular docket. Okay, Ms. Haichu, if you would, let's move into our next docketed item, please.
Docket PZ-21-019. Application has been filed by Amir Sharif for the approval of a preliminary subdivision plan with a waiver, section 5.3, item 6D, for 8 lots of approximately 11.08 acres to be known as Bridle Path. The property is located at 1105 East Highway 22, Crestwood. The zoning is R2 residential.
Okay. With that, we'll now open it up for, staff presentation, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tom McIntyre, Senior Planner, Oldham County Planning and Development Services. Wait for it to keep it. Here we go. All right. As Ms. Bree Heitchu had mentioned, or stated, an application has been filed by Mayor Sharif for the approval of a preliminary subdivision plan for 8 lots and approximately 11.08 acres to be known as Bridle Path. Property is located 1105 East Highway 22 in Crestwood, and the zone is R2 residential. We have an aerial showing the subject property. You can see this. We have the Oldham Middle School over here, and you have the subdivision over here. I believe it's North Ridge Estates. Here you have the pavement. You can see there are 2 existing structures on the property. Here we have a home followed by a red barn. Those 2 structures will remain. Here we have the zoning map. As you can see, it is in a sea of R2, completely surrounded by case history. A neighborhood meeting was held on the 9th of August. Technical review committee was held on the 18th. The adjoining property owner notices were sent out on September 9th, and the public notice appeared on the same day. The applicant is proposing a single-family residential subdivision consisting of 8 lots, 11.08 acres, to be known as Bridle Path. The plan outlines 2 detention basins, and the homes will be served by on-site septic systems. The plan outlines 0.88 acres of open space. Given that 8 lots are proposed, the development does not meet the threshold for any traffic analysis requirements. It's important to note that the existing house and barn will be located on Lot 1. Therefore, there will be 7 buildable lots. The applicant has requested a waiver of Section 5.36D, residential street hierarchy. The length of the proposed cul-de-sac is 1,409 feet, which exceeds the allowable maximum of 1,200 feet. The plan meets all other zoning and subdivision regulations. Here we have the submitted plan. As you can see, open space is highlighted over here in blue. We have this area leading up all the way up to a little bit of frontage in 22. And there's a little bit of open space behind lots 6 and 7. Additionally, this is where the detention will be located. So here's Detention Basin 1 and Detention Basin 2 is over in this area, also highlighted in. Here we have an east view. The left side is the middle school entrance. Here we are looking west towards Crestwood. Here's the south adjoining property owner. Again, here is the existing house and red barn that will remain. That will be on proposed lot 1. Here's the proposed entrance into the property. So this is where cars will enter from 22 into the proposed subdivision. Here's the property that between the existing house and where that the entrance to the proposed subdivision is going to be kind of a tight area. So this is the adjoining property to the that would be to the west. So it's 1101 East Highway 22. The proposed binding elements. The approval applies only to the plan presented at the September 28th, 2021 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. There shall be no subdivision of any lot into a greater number of lots without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission. Preliminary plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements at the time of the approval, and no record plat will be approved until all standards are satisfied. The cumulative phasing plan shall limit the number of building permits issued to 24 per year, beginning with the first record plat. I'm more than happy to answer any questions at this time.
First, I'll call on Mr. Sellerman to let him make his presentation, our county engineer.
Good morning again. So after the TRC review of this plan, the designer did implement some measures that we find useful for stormwater. Particularly, you'll see this berm that was added to capture the runoff from these lots that would have gone into these properties. So it captures it and directs it to the detention basin more effectively. We appreciate that. Additionally, they've agreed to over-detain the stormwater at least 20% more than just the typical 100%. That'll be reviewed more detail when they submit the stormwater quality management erosion control permit to our office. This is greater than 1 acre, so require that permit. They'll also be required to obtain a KYR 10 permit from the state for the same reasons. The entrance on Kentucky Highway 22 will require coordination with Kentucky Transportation Cabinet District 5 office for an encroachment permit. I have a review letter that I provided to Mr. McIntyre with some construction submittal details, which I won't belabor, but Tom, if you would provide that to the applicant after this meeting, that'd be great. A couple of the other items were, of course, I'll have to adhere to the United States Post Office cluster mailbox requirements. 2 curves here and here. Here's the radius. For those, horizontal radius curvature is consistent with AASHTO manual would have for a normal crown section for 15 miles per hour. It's a knockback curve, just a standard roadway. So there should be some accommodations, whether it's speed limit signs or other, to differentiate that from a typical 25 mile an hour roadway. Shouldn't be a problem since this is so short. And that is the extent of my comments.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, Mr. McIntyre, we'll open it up for questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Mr. Williams, Director of Pupil Personnel for Oldham County School District.
Good morning. Based on the 8 residential units and the calculations that we use for the district, that would net us a student growth of 4 students. When you do all of the calculations based on the campus, the initial calculation is that it is at 99.19% of capacity. But when you add in the additional subdivisions that have impact on those campuses, it adds an additional 290, which would push it up to 109.03% of the campus capacity. So that would mean that they would get 24 units per year. So obviously, they would be able to build the entire subdivision within the first year.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Yes, sir. Mr. McIntyre.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add, during the TRC hearing, there was a letter of concern that was submitted that is in your TRC packets. Also during that time, there was about 15 to 18 photos and 3 videos that were submitted and brought to our TRC's attention. Staff does have that available. Additionally, a letter was sent last night around 11:45, and we haven't circulated that, but I do have the letter with me, and the person that sent it is also here, and will speak before you all today.
Hey, could you put that up on the screen for us, just so we'll have it? Okay, thank you.
There's a second page to it.
Okay, sorry. All right, thank you, sir. With that, commissioners, let's, any questions for staff at this point? Questions for staff?
I'll add, if you don't mind, before you ask your question, the gentleman who penned the letter, I've actually met at his residence, and we've looked at the area. This property here. So we've done work road department that is in the Northridge subdivision for some drainage on the roadway. And again, I've met with them to discuss some of these items.
That was going to be one of my points to ask you because I thought there was work in there. My second thought was to ask you about the concern that one of the individuals brought up about the drainage line from the head wall that's on here from the outlet structure for the open space detention basin to the head wall on between these two properties. He gave that in his letter that was a French drain. I mean, is it? Have we had to see it?
This has not been installed. This is just as designed as a release to run through an existing easement and release the detention basin. So instead of releasing the detention basin right on their property line, they're utilizing the design as them utilizing the easement and extending it out to Northridge Drive. I believe that's the name of the road. Drainage ditch.
15-foot sewer and drainage easement. Is that like a contour type easement or is that any clump?
It is not right now. You can actually see the contours. And one request we made at the TRC, and they can add this, the designer can add this with construction plan, is the contours cut off here for us to verify this will work. We need the contours and elevations of this area, and that'll be required for the construction plan. Again, this takes the water from the basin and outlets in the road right of way within the subdivision.
No, they cannot put more water output onto that roadway than what's already exists, correct?
Flows there anyway. What this does is put it in a pipe to get it there.
Hello, Mr. Douglas? At all? Okay. Any additional questions for staff at this point? Any additional questions for staff? Okay. Seeing none, we'll now move into the presentation by the applicant or representative and others in support of this application. Ms. Bramall, I assume that's you. Up to 50 minutes. If you have anybody that would like to speak, I would like to get them sworn in.
Let's go ahead and swear in the applicant.
Okay.
Mir Sharif here.
No, you're good right now. Is that you?
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Ms. Bramall?
Hi, I'm Chelsea Bramall. My address is 401 West Jefferson Street. We have here today a preliminary subdivision plan at 1105 East Highway 22. Bridle path, we're located on 11.08 acres. This is 8 lots, 7 in addition to the original house that faces US 20, Highway 22. Each lot is about 1 acre. It's properly zoned R2. It is backed and sandwiched between the East Oldham campus and Northridge Estates, like we've said. This complies with all of the subdivision regulations, with the exception of one. That's the cul-de-sac regulation. Cul-de-sacs are not to exceed 1,200 feet. Our proposed cul-de-sac is about 1407. I think the office calculated at 1409. So we would need a waiver for that regulation. The entrance, the reason for it, the entrance was originally proposed following the existing driveway of the home. As you can see, it's very close in proximity to the East Oldham entrance there. And so through the meetings, it was determined that it was better located on the west side of the building. That will enable it to line up with the driveway across the street, but that takes out that safety concern and traffic concern for. And we have Mr. Gerber here, so we can swear him after I talk, if that's okay. So we determined that it was better suited on the west side of the residence as it is, just because of the unique situation to the access to the school.
So by putting in that curve and routing it around the existing house, then that brought it out of compliance with the 1,200 feet. And we're asking you to waive that regulation so we can have the 1,400 square feet. The major concern that we've heard through the TRO process and through our neighborhood meetings is the runoff concern, is the water issue. Since the construction, it's my understanding, since the construction of the East Oldham campus, the Northridge estates have experienced a good deal of additional water. The two things that Mr. Solomon has spotlighted are the detention basins. We've expanded the one in the front on the right there to accommodate 20% more of the 100% flood water. And then also with the addition of the berm on the left there, that's going to route the water down to that secondary detention basin and out to the street and to the original. Mr. Garber can speak also to that in terms of technicalities. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan to encourage the integration of community and civic facilities. There aren't too many neighborhoods that are going to be walkable to the neighborhood school system. We think that's a great opportunity not to add to a carpool line or perhaps even a bus route on two of the three schools with East Oldham right there within walking distance. It's also compatible with the adjacent development. You have all along the north, to the north of Highway 22, you've got subdivisions there. Tom showed the zoning map. They're all R2, or most of it is R2. It's future land use map has it as an agricultural single family. That's more consistent of anything south. The more agricultural parcels are to the south of that. Anything to the north, you're going to find a lot of subdivision. So it is consistent with the adjacent development. And the biggest perk of this is that access to the school. If we don't have many, it's not a large development, but whatever students you're going to get there are going to eventually have access to elementary, middle, and if the high school is on track, then all of their school system could be within walking distance. To that end, I think we can swear in Mr. Garber. So if anyone has any questions, we can.
Okay. Mr. Garber? Besides, if you would, we'll get him sworn in.
Only swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Or if you would, just name and address for the record.
2249 Commerce Parkway, Grange, 0031.
Thanks, sir. Go ahead.
Apologize for late attendance. Sitting out in the van for 12 minutes and couldn't get out.
Gosh.
This chair grabbed both of my legs and I was stuck. And anyway, I recently come down with a post-polio syndrome. I had polio years ago, and now it's rearing its ugly head. So anyway, we made some, I don't know, made some changes. Talk about this.
Need for the waiver?
For the cul-de-sac.
Cul-de-sac length.
Lane, okay. We put a cul-de-sac bulb in the back that would just the west of the fire department, even though No, they said, even though they said that the funds got back there, it's probably back out. Now, from a drainage standpoint, things we have done, try to protect the neighborhood was all the water coming from the I think it's bad. It won't work. Has its wheelchair problem. So what we did is we put in 2 basins. See the first one's on the left. Then we put one in up front. We're going to split the water as it's coming. Got 123% of the water saved. So that's a calculation that you can see on the plan. So I think we're taking care of the water. People over in Northridge have experienced some drainage problems. But we're going to try to catch some of that water and get it out of there. We can't solve all of their problems at once. Really, it's a school problem. Who could have put their own water at the back of these lots, 8, 4, and then got rid of it that way. That would have been a real nice way to do it. I know. We talked to them about using the road. It was used quite a bit during the construction of Northridge. But they didn't want us on that road. So we've attempted to do everything to make this work in this low infill property. So occasionally these infills do come in, and a lot of times they are very strange in shape. But we're lucky here, we've got utilities. The only thing that really is a problem is that water. We feel that we capture the water, let it out slowly, and solve some of the drainage problems in Northridge. The road has capacity. That's a cul-de-sac bulb in there. I think that's all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garber. Anything else to add?
Nothing else to add.
All right, so that completes your application is okay. All right, with that, is there anyone here that would like to speak in support of this application? Anyone here to speak in support of? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move into testimony and questions by those opposing the application. Whoever would like to speak in opposition or have questions, if I could, I'd like to get you all to stand up and we'll get everybody sworn in. And then when you come forward to testify, we'll get your name and address. All right, is that you?
Solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Okay, thank you. And whoever would like to go first, get you to come on forward to the podium. Okay, sure.
Palmer's 4705 Northridge Drive. My property is adjacent to where this division would end. I can attest to the water issues, having lived there 3 years. But one thing that came up during your testimony, you discussed the kids being able to have access to the school. If you've lived there long enough, you know the traffic that runs up and down that school driveway. All the school buses go in and out of there. I'd like to understand, one, how you plan.
We need to kind of face forward so we can pick you up on the microphone.
I'd like to understand, one, how you plan on creating some level of safety crossing for the children in that neighborhood to cross, because the school buses up and down that school driveway. And then would also like to understand from the housing standpoint, what is going to be the makeup of the houses, and what will be the median cost of those houses.
Can I get your name again?
Luke, Luke, last name is Chalmers, Chalmers.
Thank you, Mr. Chalmers. And all right, Mr. Urban, do we want to let him respond yet to this? Okay. All right. Well, we'll get those questions answered from the applicant in the end here. Okay, who would like to go next? Okay. Yes, sir.
My name is Chris Eaton. I live at 4712 Northridge Drive, Crestwood, Kentucky. I think that one thing that's not taken into account here with water drainage is the structures. Structures will disrupt the natural flow of water, and then retention ponds will make it an expressway to Northridge Drive, which we've had flooding whenever there's a big rain. I myself have experienced water just about up to my basement currently with the way this drainage system is now. My neighbor had to put in on his own expense drainage from our properties into the drainage system. So I don't think that the subdivision it will disrupt the water flow and create problems for the people of Northridge Farms.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Chris Bonham, live at 4713 Northridge Drive. Looking at the plot map up there, the retention basin that is on the left. My understanding, they are planning to run a pipe between my house and the next house in that existing easement. Run it right down the road, run it right down through our properties and down into the road. Mr. Douglas, you had raised a concern about the French drain that the county put in several years ago. That's what they did in the ditch between the sidewalk and the street. My questions are, how deep are they going to bury this pipe that's going to run from this retention basin down to the street? Where's the outflow? Is it before the sidewalk? Is it tying into that French drain system? How deep is that going to be buried? Because more than likely the fence that was put there when I moved in, when I moved in, the fence was in that easement. So it's my understanding it's my responsibility to replace that fence, even though I didn't put it there. So how deep is that pipe going to be, which will enable me to replace the fence? Is the pipe construction solid, or is it one of those pipes that the plastic tubing pipe that have the holes in it that allows water to eke out? If it is that plastic construction, then that's going to make my side yard, as that water flows down, flowing into my side yard, it's going to make my side yard a swampy mess. And I also have a concern when they're building this, that they're going to disrupt the tree root system of the existing trees. Those trees then do die because of that disruption. Number one, am I going to be responsible for taking them down? I would also lose property value because the trees add to property value of the home. So, I'm going to lose those. Someone had asked about how the land goes. It comes down from that retention pond, and then it slopes back up, and then it slopes down to the street. So, I'm sure that when they're building this, laying in this pipe, that they would be responsible for returning the grass and the land to the normal, what it is now. But those are my concerns. And, because me being the property owner, I'm the one that's going to be out the money so that he can build his subdivision.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, who would like to go next? Yes, sir. Make sure you get to the center of the.
Michael Allen, 4707 Northridge Drive, Crestwood, Kentucky, 40014. I'll satisfy your curiosity. No surgery and find that zoning regulations and so forth are put into place for a reason. I'm not going to question the reason why there's a 1,200-foot limit on cul-de-sac roads. But I am going to ask that the waiver to extend this to 1,240 feet or whatever the number of feet it is, to keep it at the current rate as required by planning and zoning. So if it's 1,200 feet, I would ask that you keep it at 1,200 feet. Second of all, I hope to show to you today that there's significant drainage problems that already exist, and to bring water, no matter how much it is, from this property down into Northridge Farms is going to be a mistake, and it's going to be a mistake that's going to cost the county or homeowners, or a combination of the two, quite significantly over the years to come. The letter that was put up earlier, I wrote it last night. I apologize it was late, but I just haven't been feeling well since this has taken place. So I want to talk to you specifically about the drainage today. I want to show you pictures of what's going on currently. I wanted Don Weilich to come up. Don's a neighbor of mine and has been for 17 years. I've lived there for 20 years. So we were there before the school was built on the property that's adjacent to the property that we're talking about today. We never had problems with drainage before the school was built. For some reason, something has happened. The only thing that's happened is the school, and we're not against schools, of course, but something's going on back there that was changed that's causing a problem. I can tell you that Don, since I couldn't get him to come up and speak, had flooding while the school was being built, water into his garage. I can tell you that my neighbor just to my north also had flooding in his basement while the school was being built. We'll see some of the water that today when I show you the pictures. He had flooding. He went to the school. The school worked out a private deal with him, gave him some money as a result of the flooding. He took the money, sold the lot that he had next door because he owned two lots, and moved because he knew there was going to be a continuing issue. So with that, I'm going to show you some pictures, and this is not all we have. I have several videos that I did not include in this, which would speak to the volume of water that we're talking about. And it's not an uncommon thing for the amount of water that we're going to show you today that's coming on the Northridge Farms already. It's not an uncommon thing for this to happen on a fairly regular basis now. And I would say that, quote, if you believe climate change is a real thing and that storms are getting worse, et cetera, and with all the flooding that we see in the news today, that's not only occurring in the United States in places that it hadn't occurred before, but all over the world. So if we can assume that 20% might get the job done with regard to the additional moves that are being taken here to retain stormwater, and you're not allowed to send any more stormwater off of a property than was originally running off that property. So we're not adhering to that law, that construction and engineering at all. That's passed. It's a problem that needs to be addressed, and I hope that we can continue this discussion with a few of us, as I requested at the end of the letter there. So I see people looking at the clock. How long do I have?
Got 40 minutes left.
Okay, we won't take all that. What you're looking at here is it's not really a quote, I guess, a detention basin, but this was put in on the school property during the construction of the schools, maybe to retain or detain some water. Our engineer could probably speak to that better than I can about what's going on there. But at this point, it's not designed, I don't believe, catch water and retain or detain the water. It's just there. Now, as a result of it being there, it does catch some water, and you're saying, okay, where is this? As you drive in the school property and drive up to the top of the hill where the stop sign is, if you look over to your left or just to your west, you'll see that this detention basin or this water down here. On the other side of those trees there, going down the hill, is the property Northridge Farms. Okay? Questions? This is out the, as you're looking down the hill on the right side of the ditch, this is out the right side of the retention. I'm going to call it a retention basin, detention basin. Detention is actually the proper term. Retention means it retains water all the time. This doesn't retain water all the time. So it's a small detention basin. You can see that there's the water that's running out of there is actually laying the grass down on the right-hand side. So in addition to the water that's coming out of there, you've also got water that's coming from up on the hill down into this area here. And then what you're looking at now are the fences along the back of Northridge Farms or Northridge Drive that abut current school property, not the property that's being developed, but current school property. And you can see that just on the other side of the fence from the drainage that's occurring, if you look closely, there's water starting to build up there. And if you look before you even get to the fence, there's water that's accumulating there, okay? And then running down into that area along the low place in the fence there. Can everyone see that well? Okay, thank you. So this is now standing in the front of the home of the gentleman who worked out a deal with the school system because his lower elevation of his home, his finished basement, was being flooded. So the house that you see up on the hill a little bit to my left is the house that was built after he took that money, sold that lot, built there, and then he moved. But the water has accumulated, and that water that's accumulating there is coming from that small triangular piece of land that is still part of the school property. Okay, this is above, if you will, this is above the current development that's being considered here today. Questions?
We'll get questions here after we just a little bit after you make your presentation.
So I think this was just a repeat of what we just saw. So we'll go past that. All right, so we step back a little bit from the previous picture that you just saw. We're now standing in my yard, in the front of my yard. And so that water that you're seeing that's coming down through there and across that yard to the house just to my left as you face the property that's being developed, that amount of water is that water that's coming from just the school property back there through those yards. And as well, there are two houses now above that. So I'm sure we're getting some of that water that's coming down and draining down through there and running down up there, down across the fire hydrant, down across the driveway there, and into what's currently a drainage ditch, which runs all the way down Northridge Drive, and across and into the creek that's on the other side of Highway 22. That's a significant volume of water there. This is not anywhere near as bad as it's been. This is kind of after the storm when you want to get out there and say, okay, I've got to get something that shows what's going on. So this is going into the ditch. Now it's talked about the county has come out and done some things to alleviate the problems that are now occurring because of runoff, and those ditches won't dry out. You can't keep them cut. And so that's going to continue to be a problem. And it's probably going to get worse. Just kind of this is a repeat, same area of water that's coming down through there. Septic systems being overflowed. This is not anywhere near as bad as it's been, but this is just to give you an idea of the water that's coming down through there. Okay. Now, property that I have is the house that's immediately that you see there, just to the left of the sign. Mr. Wilding's property is on the right side of there. That
water that's coming through there at this point is probably about 3 times more than it ever was before the storm was put back in. And then it's going out into the street. This is between Mr. Wallage's house and mine. There's not a lot, if you bring any additional water down through there, it's going to get into Mr. Wallage's garage and into his basement, and the potential for it to get in. We have a lower level that's finished, 3-car garage down there. If it gets in the garage in our house, it's in the lower level of the house. This is the street, Northridge Farm. So there's supposed to be a drainage. This is on the, if you're actually facing south now, you can see that the drainage ditches on the right side of the road are full. It's running back and then into the street from the right, and it's coming into the street from the left. I don't know how much water it takes to destroy a road, but you keep doing that, it's going to destroy the road and the properties. There are about 15 houses that are going to be affected. We're going to build 7. Use 1 lot that's already there for the house that exists there currently, and then you're going to potentially affect 15 homes that are already there. This is looking down to the water has drained down some. Looking south down toward 22 from Northridge Drive. The ditch is completely full. Add a little more water. I'm not going to continue to belabor this. I think the point is made. I hope you'll take this into consideration, and that we'll continue to work with the county and try and look at solutions that will be long term. I simply say to you, you can capture 120% of the water. Question I have, by requirement, you have to capture 100%. 20%, is that the right number? I don't know. Are we willing to gamble on 20%? Personally, I don't think that's a good idea. And I ask you to agree with me and require that something else be done to help resolve the problem. I'm not going to go into the videos. I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you for your time. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would have testimony or questions?
Good morning. My name is Chris Wilson. I'm 4711 Northridge Drive.
Wilson's last name?
Yeah.
Will you spell that, please?
ILSON.
Okay. That's what I thought I heard. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I won't rehash some of the things that have already been brought up. I am one of the properties that is adjacent to this retention basin. In fact, the entire east side of my property will be taken up by this retention basin. By the applicant's own testimony, they have said that this will not be immediately drained. It will be a slow drain, which means at some point during a rainy season, the bottom of this retention basin will remain moist or wet or have standing water in it. My concern is that the applicant has made no effort in regards to pest control. So this becomes, during certain times of the year, this becomes a breeding ground for mosquitoes and other pests, reptiles, et cetera, et cetera. And that is concerning. I also am one of the impacted properties that would be this pipeline would be brought over. I am not a lawyer, and I'm sure the county attorney would probably correct me if I'm wrong, but this is an easement for the purpose of allowing utilities and servicing of existing utilities or future utilities. And particularly the labeling of a sewer easement would be for the purpose, should the county or the subdivision ever desire to place sewer in, which right now we are entirely a septic system subdivision, as well as the proposed subdivision will be using a septic system. So a sewer is not on the table at this time, but the easement is for the purpose should the future allow for connection of sewer. That's the purpose of that easement. It's also there for should LG&E or any other utility which is under the Kentucky PSC to allow them the opportunity to place things in there. I do not see this proposal where one private homeowner is allowed to infringe upon the properties of not one but two property owners for the purpose of draining their own particular subdivision's water runoff. I think it would be more appropriate for the applicant to retain their own water and dispose of it in some other manner that is not residential in nature. They do have an opening to the county's right-of-way where there are already drainage ditches. They also have proposed on one of the other basins to put it onto the school's property. I don't have any say as to whether the school would be opposed to that or not opposed to that, but they are non-residential, so that is obviously theirs to defend. But I don't see it appropriate for this commission to approve an infringement of one property owner on another property owner to provide, as one gentleman has testified, to basically rip up the existing trees and fences for the purpose of allowing another private homeowner to be able to do away with their runoff. So with that, I'll conclude my testimony. Thank you.
Wilson, thank you. All right, anyone else that has questions or would like to testify in opposition? All right. No one else getting up, so Ms. Bramble, do you want to try to answer these questions or these concerns?
With regard to the drainage easement, the applicant is happy to work with the property owners to the extent that any fences need to be moved. We've discussed accommodations we can make with regard to what we can do to help alleviate any expense that they might incur if the fences have to be moved or with regard to any landscape there. With regard to the water drainage, I think, again, the neighbor has asked to rely on the science of climate change. I'm going to ask to rely on the science of water retention. So all we can go by is the figures that are going to be required to collect any water that is going to be caused by this development. We're going above and beyond those. We've offered 120%. We've expanded. We've created the berm. We don't believe that we can solve all the problems that were likely caused by the development of the school. But frankly, that's not our job to fix. We can only do what we can do on this piece of property. So if this creates the opportunity to fix those problems, we're happy that it brought them to the county's attention. But we can only fix, we can only offer to engineer this project so it doesn't create any additional water on those neighbors. And you have to agree with the numbers here that it's not going to do that because that's all we have. I think that's about the only thing that I can speak to. Mr. Garber, do you have anything to contribute about the water? Okay.
The water has been a problem around this development ever since the go-round. We had problems with it when they were building it. Tried to do what we could for them to keep their water on their property, but as the construction of the school went on, it brought more water down. I believe there's a ridge that runs up down about the center of the school property and hits in the front. So that means all of that water is coming towards Free Farms.
I believe the way the regulations read, we are really only responsible for detaining water from our property. Now remember we had trouble with the school board trying to do something with their problems. So we just went on and did what we could on the subdivision property. And then there's the ban. I mean, what they're putting up with. What's there at the bottom of that hill. I think could be resolved by reworking some of the ditches in Northridge Farms, getting that water out to 22. Now, I believe that the rates in the pipe 22 somewhat high, not too low. However, going over that quite a bit, we were designing it. And that is the situation that needs to be fixed. I don't know if we can get rid of all of that water. We can certainly try to put some restriction off our property. Sometimes it's difficult to do that, to talk to your client and have them agree to spend money on somebody else's property. In this case, it wasn't such a big deal. It would be important to do that. It would be like going up on a school property, seeing that electric works coming down there, and then we have to capture that water in a ditch before it would hit their property. And on down. Which I guess that was all part of the natural drainage for the subdivision. There's a creek across 22, and that's where all the water used to go. So and we're not adding, we're adding a little more. We're adding more water on the driveways and sidewalk and houses. I asked a question about
I have a list of questions that David, if you're willing to, you can answer, that I wrote down that were asked. That's okay. Considering the pipe, there were questions about the how deep is the pipe going to be? Is it going to tie into the French drain? Is it solid or perforated? And then in relation to that, are you going to replace the fences, trees, and restore the grass and landscaping?
Yes, we would restore anything that was disturbed, and if the pipe under 22 is large enough, we could use a larger pipe for the French drain, put it down maybe 4 feet, be slotted, so as the water comes in the ditch, the ditch gate handle goes through, gets into the pipe, and then the pipe takes all the water. They're done right, they work pretty good, and they help drain an area that used to be wet.
Okay, there was a question about pest control and reptiles in the detention basin.
Evidently, I think the entrance he was taken was on school property.
Well, no, in this development, the question was that it's behind this Mr. Wilson's property, and whether or not there was going to be some kind of, because detention basins can be wet for a period of time, would there be any pest control or reptile control?
Right, that's it. What we're planning, of course, is retention basin, and those are supposed to drain out within 24 hours. So, it should be going down fairly slow, but when they're done, it should be.
Beg your pardon, may I? Did you say retention or detention?
Detention. So, once once that water starts going down, it goes out. Now, if one's not working properly, that's something that needs to be looked at.
Mr. Urban, there's also questions about safety for children that are walking. That you mentioned this was a walking neighborhood, and Ms. Bramwell, I think you can answer these. And then we don't usually consider housing style and price, but I don't know if you have any information about that.
We don't at this time. I think that's better left to a further development plan. We also, it's my understanding there is a crosswalk in proximity to the neighborhood. I'm not exactly sure where that is, but we can explore that later at the next point in time. With regard to the fence issue, it may be a situation where we would need to move the fence if it is going to be in that easement. To the extent that we agreed to work with the property owners to get those items back in place, it may not be practical to put a fence back in the easement. We may be more useful to put in the appropriate place outside of the easement. Just to put that on the table, that it may not look exactly like it does now, but for maintenance purposes, it shouldn't be there anyway.
Urban, the questions that I had written down. I had one. Who was thinking? The 1,200 foot. Mr. McIntyre or Mr. Urban, do you want to address that? I think it was a question for Mr. Allen about why it's, why we have the regulation of 1,200 feet and why they're requesting the 1,400 feet. Well, go ahead.
So it's part of the plan is 1409. Plan is 1409, which is 209 feet longer than the allowable 1,200. I believe the 1,200 was about schools and how you have to be able, say a fire truck, if you go down, you don't want to go past 1,200 feet, so they can't turn around. So you want to provide them areas to turn around and be able to service different areas of that drive or private drive, whatever it may be.
Okay. All right. Well, now we'll open it up for questions from the commission. I'm sure we have a few here. Mr. King.
Thank you. I'm sorry to
You have
jump
30
in.
minutes also.
So, other questions that were asked that we haven't covered yet. So, I think Mr. Stillman probably is best for this one, if you don't mind. So, the easements that are on the properties in Northridge Farms, which is what type of easements are there and what is appropriate in that type of easement?
I don't have the Northridge Farms record plat with me right now.
What's listed
If it's labeled,
on the subdivision plan, they're all 15-foot sewer and drainage easements. They're not other
But
utilities.
what I was going to say is if we verify, and I think we have verified that that's the way they're listed on the actual record plat, which we'll check. If it includes the drainage statement, then it includes, and then you would be allowed to run a pipe for public waters.
So these are, does anybody know how long these easements have been there? Is it since the construction of Northridge?
They would probably be on the original record plat for the original subdivision.
So if I wanted to run a utility, like a gas line through that, could I use it?
Well, I believe that was labeled sewer and drainage, so it would only be for sewer and drainage.
The only utility I could really run through that is a sewer line.
Right, by the record.
Or drainage.
Naturally, yes.
Storm, right, so you can storm and sanitary sewer.
Good. All right. All right. So tell me what we've seen about the drainage. Where is this flow coming from? Is it coming from the site or is it coming from the school?
Well, it's the pictures Mr. Allen showed of Northridge Drive underwater sometimes. It comes from both sides. The drainage area is large. The drainage on that side is going to come from the school. It comes from the subject property. It comes from a larger area.
Is the subject property producing that kind of volume, or is it sheet flow coming across that property?
Well, it shouldn't be much sheet flow coming across the property because the road into the school, the entrance, would capture it and push it towards a basin east of that. there is an area of the school property original construction plans include basins above this area that should be capturing water and taking it to one of two basins on the school property. There's obviously some additional water coming through. Looking at the contours, it doesn't appear to be a large area, but the volume going through there is. But again, as Mr. Garber stated, what they're focusing on is trying to capture some of what's on the subject property with berm and a basin and redirect it.
Berm and basin, also a roadway. Does the roadway catch drainage and divert it down towards Highway 22?
Catch basins have your routing. It would route that to the basins according to this plan.
I think that's all I have for now. Thanks.
All right, commissioners, any additional questions? Mr. Douglas?
The county engineer, I noticed that on their design plan, this is just a tentative stormwater runoff plan, but it appears that there is a 15-foot easement between the two property lines of North Ridge and Bridle Path. Is that correct?
There is an easement showing for the swale you've designed.
The sewer and drainage easement in between, I guess, where the black fence runs down through.
And
I see where there's lines dictating on there directional. Is that directional for water?
correct, so that's, I mean, it's the drainage swale that directs the water from the subject property into the two basins.
And then as to the engineer or the applicant, most of that water diverted or routed in between the two subdivisions proposed. Well, for instance, you have from the detention basin on number one, the open space number two, I'm sorry. You have the outlet structure going to North Ridge. Why isn't it going down towards the side of the property line? And I understand that there's another outlet detention basin or detention basin number one in the front, but it's in front or behind a property owner off of Highway 22, correct? Is there any way, I don't see where much water out of, I have two questions. One was, why wasn't most of the water running down between the two property lines? Two subdivisions. And second, my second question is on detention basin one, where's the water going out at this point? I mean, I see water coming in, the head wall in the detention basin, then I see an outlet structure going uphill. I don't know how water runs uphill, because if you look at the slope of what you have, and I'm not an engineer, but I'm just trying to figure out where that water is supposed to go up here by the school property. And then there's a head wall in the outlet structure in detention basin one. Is there a way they could connect pipes to cross 22 to the creek from there?
The nearest contour within the basin, number one, actually the contours through there range from 770 to 774. The outlet structure, the contour near the entrance to the school is 762, so there's nearly 8 to 10 feet of drop between those two. And of course, they'll have to excavate out some for the basin itself, but with 8 or 10 feet, there seems to be a reasonable amount of fall towards the school entrance from that basin.
First question would be is the outlet structure in this detention basin two, coming across North Ridge, why isn't any of the water running down to detention basin one? Or is that just using a natural flow?
And again, if you look at the contours, the break point, and if you pull arrowheads, really right at the high point of this contour, which is 786, I believe. And so it's following natural
drainage.
The point I'm making is, I needed you to put that on record, why it was like this, why it's signed this way.
Natural drainage.
So just put it in plain English for us.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Mr. Hampton?
I know this is hypothetical, but if pool is not there, there's always pool is not there. This development.
It would generate the amount that eight lots developed are. That's it's hard to answer that question. Again, what the developer is required to do by ordinance is not allow any more flow from the site than it currently generates post versus pre-development. What they're proposing is to over-detain 20% to try and build in a factor of safety of that to go above and beyond the current ordinance.
But we're now going to be required to hear that we're coming towards the subdivision school. Because the school is not ready. It's just itching. So we are picking water from the school. And get that water into our system. And we can solve the problem.
Oh, I gotta be careful how I word this. I don't. It seems like there's because you can't help with the way the lay of the land is. The previous problems they have with the flooding. I feel like they're getting punished for the school runoff.
I don't think we can look at it that way. It's been long enough. The school's been in it long enough that it's now working in that area. We've got to take into consideration that
Okay. Yeah. Hold on, Mr. Douglas. Anybody else have questions? Or any testimony so far? Any additional questions? Yes, sir. Mr. Falvey, I'll get back to you.
I guess, Mr. Silman, you might answer this. When you looked at all of this, did you go back and look if the school board adhered to the original record plat, what they were supposed to do with their retention and detention? Are they doing what they said they were supposed to do?
The installation that I've observed on site appears to match the construction plans that were approved for the school.
That all, Mr. Falvey? Okay. Mr. Kane, let me get Mr. Douglas and I'll get you. Mr. Douglas?
One is I just wanted to follow up on if the applicant determines that the detention basin is based on Mr. Silman's determination on the completion of the stormwater during construction plan phases, that the detention basin 1 and detention basin 2 were not large enough to control the flow. Where do you get the extra open space to acquire that? Or do you just make it deeper?
larger, and it won't be deeper. If larger, update that water.
Where do you get that property from? Because I'm looking at each lot. Each lot is, if you're trying to keep it at 1 acre, I'm assuming I don't want to say, not sure why it's just right at, like some of the lots are like 1.0003, whatever it is. So I don't know if that's a question that staff has to answer, because we're right at minimum areas for lot size.
Lots is that'd be a problem. But 5, 4, hunters are fairly far apart.
If you had to acquire detention basin larger, you would have to go into lot 2. that could be a smaller lot. I'm just looking at the acreage.
It's worth lot 8. It's not. See the problem. See, if you look to the left of lot 8, try to figure out what's going on. We see it's a rock check dam. Put in there and slow the water down. You put coming from that rock check dam, get in our system.
And I believe the TRC or one of the meetings, Oldham County Health Department stated that this development could handle septics and water.
In Northridge, we have an engineer for section 1. We were in on, brought in a house, and they had a problem.
Mill plan, catch and dispose of the water drainage or storm water off as it's created or in it. Does it basically catch and dispose of accordingly?
Right now, I think we're 20% over. Definitely. Water is its range today. In 100 years, no more. Water. I'm here 10 years. It's slower. You'll see the basins. Don't even over light rain.
That almost looks okay. Mr. Key.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Silliman, there were some photos Mr. Allen put up for us that indicated a great deal of water running through property. Can you give us an indication on the plan where that's occurring? Can you get a visual for us on this?
So, correct me if I'm wrong with your photos. I think a great deal of it is coming through this channel here. You can see the contours direct to water. That's Mr. Allen's property here. I believe this is that rock check dam feature that Mr. Allen had a photo of. What that is during construction of the school property, they had installed a temporary silt check. It's a measure that's utilized during construction to maintain erosion control. So it was a rock berm that was placed there to hold water shortly. It lets silt settle out of runoff during construction. It was not removed. Typically, they're removed after construction because they're no longer needed. It was left. It doesn't do any harm. It actually does hold a little bit of water, very minimal. It's small, but it's been left in place. It's not a designed basin by any means. Of course, the significant amount of runoff in the road that he showed, once it gets through the properties, once again on both sides, it's down Northridge Drive here.
All right, and so what is being proposed does not by any stretch stop that flow. It takes it and reroutes it down the existing easements after being detained.
Right.
So is the detainments feature, is it of sufficient capacity to catch what's coming in clearly from offsite onto this property on a small piece of this property? It's going to catch it and hold it on property and then disperse. Is it capable of doing this?
The preliminary calculations that Mr. Garber shows on these plans indicate that the capacity of the basin will be sufficient. what's shown here is again a swale and a berm to help capture what was natural runoff going this direction and direct it to this basin in this case.
Wait a second. You'll get back in for.
You'll have a
chance
chance.
for rebuttal in just a moment.
So the water coming through this route, Mr. Allen's and the neighboring property, this portion is remaining unchanged. This area, you can see by the contours, that does contribute to that water. The designer is proposing to capture it instead of rerouting this way.
So if I said it differently, this feature is going to have design that catches more than the runoff that is produced by what falls on this property.
As intended, it appears to be beneficial to reduce some of the stormwater runoff.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any additional questions from the commissioners? Yes, Mr. Falvey.
I'd like to go back to that easement on the 1400 on the cul-de-sac. That's almost a 20% increase in size. Is that
The lengthwise, if
this is for Mr. McIntyre, but is that seems long to me, 1,400 and some odd feet versus the recommended 1,200. That's almost 20%.
It exceeds the allowance by 209 feet.
We've done that before in the past for anybody.
We have. There's a project up on Goshen Lane. It was after the Pulte. There was 870 something lots up there. You all, I believe, decided to deny that application. New application was submitted with maybe 9 to 11 lots. It was right when I first got on board. One of my first preliminary subdivisions, and we approved a waiver for that. Because if you remember, there's one street going in, and there's a bump out in the middle, and it was over 2,000 feet. It was the distance because they provided the bump. That's what made you all agreeable to the waiver. So we have done them before. It's just been a while since a waiver of this nature has been in front of you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. Davis.
Would it be possible to add another dimension?
Pull your microphone a little closer, if you would. Pull your microphone a little closer. There you go.
Would it be possible to add another detention basin down behind the two lots, maybe lot, I think it was lot 22 in Northwoods, to slow the water, if it detained the water for a while, and let it drain slowly? I'm looking at it, there is a detention basin, but it's all the way down lot 1, but I'm to put it behind those lots where the water's rushing down through there now. Would it not solve the problem more to have the detention basin behind the lots up in the subdivision development of Northwood?
Where the natural water is.
Sorry. Yeah, just come just a little bit closer, if you would. Sure.
Condition came on fast, it really did. The contrary show that you notice they are pointing over, and they're pointing up where they point, so that means that's how the water's gonna run. And contours are pretty far apart there, so it's really kind of shallow flow. That flow goes all the way out through this.
Did I answer your question?
Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions from the commission? Oh, okay, Mr. Klingenfuse. Focus for Jim. Okay. The length of the cul-de-sac, the reason for that is the number of houses coming out on it. I don't believe so. It's been in the subdivision regulations ever since I can remember, which is back to 1998. And I can't honestly say that I understand why there's a limitation. Give you a real answer to that. Like, to me, it looks like it'd be about 16 houses, something 1,200 feet long. Depends on the 150-foot amount of frontage. And, you know, there are, like Mr. McIntyre mentioned, there's that one, you know, I know that we, you know, a long time ago, we waived it. It may be to, you know, divide traffic up differently or something. We've never talked about it in any regulations or any provisions of regulations. It's been around forever.
Well, in this particular development, it's only fit on one side of the road.
Yes,
on one side.
that's correct.
That should make a factor.
Make a difference as opposed to two-sided.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions, commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we'll now move into rebuttal evidence and cross-examination by the applicant. Ms. Bramble?
Nothing in terms of cross-examination.
Closer to the mic.
I have nothing on this matter.
Okay. All right, we'll move into then rebuttal evidence and cross-examination by the opposition. Alan?
Thank you, and also for maintaining order.
Yes, sir.
Mr. King, you had requested and used an interesting term, sheet flow with water. I can tell you from standing in it after the storm that the sheet flow in the area where I showed you where the pictures was coming in was over your ankles. And the sheet flow that's coming from the area, maybe some of it is coming from, and I can't tell the lot through the last lot that's on the left, if that's lot 8. Maybe some of it's coming from there. Certainly some of it's coming from the school. But as I walk out the back gate on the property that I have, and I'm 4707, I can't read up there what's going on. But as I walk toward the school property there, because there's a fence, it's a wire fence that runs between this property and the school property. The sheet flow there, and I have video of this as well, is also over your ankles. So the sheet flow coming from either the property here and the upper part and the left over in the school are both ankle deep before they get down into the low point there and then run down across the property, which is why you see the large volume of water that you saw and I didn't even show you the videos, which are much more compelling. But the other thing that I would add is this: okay, you've got a street coming in here, which is going to be impervious to water. You've got he talked about the size of the houses being, I think he said fairly large, or maximizing the size of the houses. You've got roofs on all those. You've got driveways on all of those. You've got downspouts. You've got patios. All of that creates additional water. Now, I find it interesting that just today, and I'm glad it was clarified that the engineer who was involved with this talked about a problem that existed in Northridge Farms, evidently when it was built, and he was the engineer there. He's also the engineer here. Okay, so again, I say to you, please, let's make sure that we take actions that prevents and doesn't cause additional problems for the homeowners in Northridge Farm. You've got twice the number of homes there. I don't think you want 15 homeowners down there ultimately upset over what happens here. And this can be done. I think it can be done, but I think it has to be done with caution. We don't want to be back dealing with this thing in 5 or 6 years. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. All right, anyone else? Yes, sir, for rebuttal.
Chris Bonham, 4713 Northridge Drive. My problem is not with the school property water. My problem is with the water coming out of that field behind my house. I didn't send the pictures in. I have one up on my phone. I don't know if I can get that to you or we can hook it up. A little hard to see, but if you, does this work? We'll just okay. If you look in This area here, that's the area where Mr. Wilson's property and my property adjoin. Basically, that is all that water that is coming off the field that's directly behind my house and Mr. Wilson's house. The contour goes to a dip there. You can also see in the upper right-hand corner, about midway, the water that is coming from that side of the field. When I moved in my house, there was a swale that was built into my backyard, approximately 20 feet from my basement door. And that's where all that water collects, and it flows down that swale to, as you're looking at from street view, the right side of my property, and it flows between my property and my neighbor's property and floods his front yard. Totally floods his front yard. He does have a drain there. That's where all that water's going. It's not coming from the school. It's coming directly from that field. And my question with that retention pond, I didn't hear answered. Is it going to be a solid pipe or is it going to be a perforated pipe that's going to move that water down? So my problem's not with the school. My problem is with the field. And if you can see the picture a little better, approximately 10 feet in front of the shed, there is a depression there where all that water over the years has basically dug a hole. So I guess I got my own retention pond flood. So you can see that is my problem with all this water and my neighbor's problem with all that water as well.
Thank you, sir. All right, anyone else? Got about 4 minutes left here on the opportunity for rebuttal evidence and cross-examination of the opposition. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one. Well, just a minute. Hold on just a second, Mr. Harper. Okay, so no one else on rebuttal evidence of the opposition. So now we'll move into final statement of the opposition. You'll have a minute for you to hear the final statement, Mr. Harper. So, anything that, as far as a final statement from anyone that spoke in opposition? Yes, sir. Come on back up.
As long as they can resolve the problems that we brought up, you know, I feel that would work. But, you know, I still haven't heard answers. I understand they need time to come up with those answers. But until I get answers, I'm going to remain opposed to this project.
Yes, sir. Understand. Okay. Mr. Allen?
My final statement is simply this. In this county, we are before a group of people that have the opportunity to make sure that things happen properly and that other homeowners are not negatively affected by something that's being done. So we're asking you, please, to try to make sure that we do everything possible to negate any possible additional runoff of water that impacts this, Northridge Farms. So do the right thing, please.
Thank you, sir. All right. Anyone else on final statement? Okay. Seeing no one. Mr. Garber, if you want to, and Ms. Bramble, now the final statement of the applicant, do you want to just quickly address the type of pipe that's going to be put in on his property, or that would be put in on his property, whether it's a solid pipe or a pipe with holes in it?
It'll probably be a perforated pipe. That way we take advantage of it, being able to collect additional waters that may be coming in. What I wanted to speak to was about
Okay. All right. Ms. Bramble, this is your final statement.
Briefly, in conclusion,
Just a little bit if you have room there. There you go.
briefly in conclusion, we've met all of the subdivision regulations with the exception of the waiver request. We do again renew our request to grant that waiver so that we can extend that cul-de-sac to accommodate a better safety plan for the entrance of the subdivision. If we addressing the water concerns, if we do nothing, it appears that
their water issues won't be resolved. It'll be a continuation of what's already happening with the water in the backyard. With this plan in place, it actually may improve the situation to the extent that we put the provisions in place over and above what is required. And hopefully that will mitigate some of that runoff to the backyard problem. So it could actually serve to benefit the homeowners. I know that seems like a bit of a stretch, but we're actually putting some engineering in place that is intended to get that water off the back of their yards. Mr. Garber, do you have any final?
Yes, I think that's what I'm going to say. When we do an overall plan, a lot of times it does affect the lots, all of the lots, not just the edges where we have easements. But it winds up that the builder doesn't shape final ground like we wanted it shaped. And at that point, we're not involved, and the owner owns the lot, so he can do what he wants to do. So sometimes the builder, and mess up the drainage system. They think that he's not doing much, but it could really drastically change what the water's doing.
Okay, Mr. Garber. Ms. Bramble, anything else to finish up?
We appreciate your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, docket PZ 21019 is now closed. And I'll call on Mr. Urban, as always, to outline waiver request and also what's being required.
For your first consideration is the waiver of section 5.3.6D for the residential street hierarchy to allow for a street that extends beyond the 1,200 foot limit that's in the subdivision regulations. You do have a justification statement in your packet from the applicant regarding that waiver, and you need to consider that. I believe that we will put the defining elements on the preliminary subdivision plan if we choose to move forward. Okay. All right. You've heard the Mr. Urban outline the waiver request. At this point, the chair would now entertain a motion on the waiver request on docket PZ 21019. This is just on the waiver request. Mr. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respect to the waiver request, I will move for approval of the waiver request based on testimony and evidence presented. The additional length of this road is created by moving the cut further west to accommodate safety concerns, essentially increasing distance between the access point to the existing site and the access point to the school campus. I think that's all I've got on this.
Okay. Mr. Carter, is that an adequate motion on the waiver? Okay. Do we have a second? Mr. Hampton seconds. Okay. Any discussion now on the motion to approve the waiver request on docket PZ 21019? Any discussion? Mr. Douglas, pull your mic forward.
I did not hear in testimony, but staff may be able to answer this. The existing entrance driveway will no longer exist.
Mr. Urban? Or Mr. McIntyre?
The motion included that they were moving the entrance further to the west because of the proximity to the school campus.
So no testimony about eliminating the existing driveway.
Some part of this decision.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to approve the waiver request? Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I invite you, if you would, let's take the vote on this. Is a motion to approve the waiver request on docket PZ 21019.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Mr. Smith? Ms. Nasser? Yes. Mr. Klingenfuss? Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton? Mr. Finney? Falvey? Mr. Elder? Douglas? Ms. Davis?
All right, a waiver request motion on docket PZ 21019 has been approved on a vote of 11-0. With that, Mr. Urban, now would you outline the preliminary subdivision plan that's being requested?
Or on page 2 in your staff report, there's possible motions for either approval or denial of the preliminary subdivision plan. It's important that you fill in the blanks when you're making that decision regarding your motion and then approval. If the motion is to approve, there are proposed binding elements. The first is that the approval applies only to the plan presented at the September 28, 2021 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. The second is there shall be no subdivision of any lot into a greater number of lots without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission. Third is the preliminary plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements at the time of approval, and no record plat will be approved until all standards are satisfied. Number 4 is the cumulative phasing plan shall limit the number of building permits issued to 24 per year, beginning with the first record plat. And then I heard Mr. Silliman mention about speed limit signs shall be placed in areas of the curves as recommended by the county engineer. Now, in relation to all of the stormwater management, I don't know whether there's a binding element that covers that, other than you've heard a lot of testimony, and during construction plan development and review by the county engineer's office, I think it's imperative that they, number one, over-contain, which they said that they're going to do by 20%, and work towards a resolution of these stormwater issues as best as possible. Other than going through construction plans, I'm not sure. And again, that's if you choose to recommend it. Okay, Mr. Herbert. Mr. Carter, anything you need to add to that? Okay. All right, commissioners, you've heard what Mr. Urban has outlined on the preliminary subdivision plan request on docket PZ 21019. What's the pleasure of the commission? The chair will entertain a motion at this point. I can go back to some. We did hear in the testimony that the applicant's attorney represented in, I guess, response to questions that they would work with property owners on replacing fences, landscaping, and trees, as well as the grass, and I think that could be another binding. Okay, sometimes we hear testimony and we don't make it a binding element, and then the question is, well, wait a minute, do they have to do it? So I think that would be one that needs to be added. Ms. Bramble, are you all okay with that? Okay. All right, commissioners. Well, let's get a motion on the floor first, if we could. Everyone ready to do a motion? Be comfortable with moving a motion here. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll get a motion on the floor. I'll move for approval of the preliminary subdivision plan as submitted. I believe that the evidence tells us that site is in accordance with subdivision regulations and zoning ordinance. In addition, we've heard enormous testimony about and seen that enormous concern about drainage issues on site, with applicants' plan to address those issues. And I think compelling among the content presented is the obvious done. Those drainage issues are going to persist. And from this perspective, the involvement of the county engineer and applicant's engineering team to pick up and do something with these issues makes more sense than doing nothing. A motion.
Okay, Mr. Carter, is that an adequate motion, sir? Okay, do we have a second? Okay, Mr. Falvey seconds. All right, we'll open it up for discussion. Mr. Finney?
On these binding elements, is the inclusion of the retention basin at a additional 20% a binding element or not?
I did not include any language because again, I wasn't sure how to write it. For testimony related to that, you can make it a binding element. But Mr. Silliman, maybe answer that. Or
just that since the preliminary plan you're approving does show 123%, so 23% over detention, if you approve this plan, we would verify that it's built to this preliminary plan, and therefore, I think without a binding element, it's included.
At a minimum?
At a minimum.
Thank you.
did that answer your question, Mr. Finney?
Means it should be a binding element at that.
Well, what he just said was that if we approve this, then he as county engineer would make sure that was 123% capacity, correct, Mr. Sullivan? 120, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion to approve the preliminary subdivision plan? Yes, Mr. Douglas.
Mr. King include the binding elements? I didn't hear that.
I would expect to incorporate the binding elements. Thank you. So if we need to amend that motion or just acknowledge that it's accepted, whichever.
Okay. Mr. Falvey, is that okay with you? Okay, we'll just add it, as we'll accept that. All right, any further discussion? The motion to approve. The discussion. Okay, seeing none. Ms. Hatcher, if you would, this is on docket PZ 21019. Motion to approve the preliminary subdivision plan. Let's see, on the bridle path.
Ms. Davis? Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Elder? Mr. Falvey? Mr. Finney? Mr. Hampton? Mr. King?
Yes.
Klingenfuss? Ms. Nasser? Mr. Smith? Ms. Jones? Yes.
Okay, the motion on docket PZ 21019 to approve the preliminary subdivision plan with the attached binding elements has been approved on a vote of 10 to 1. So commissioners, take a 10-minute recess here. And we have two
Please tell me on it.
So invested.
Ready, Jim? You ready? Okay. All right, commissioners, if you could, let's come back to order for our last two docketed items today. And I'll call on Ms. Haichu to read the two dockets, please.
First, we have docket PZ-21-021. Application has been filed by Jason Greer for the approval of a zoning map amendment on approximately 2.10 acres. The property is located at 4411 West Highway 146 and 3404 Cedar Point Lane, Buckner. The proposed changes from R2 residential and C2 commercial community business district to C3 commercial general business. And then docket PZ-21-022. Application has been filed by Jason Greer for the approval of a development plan, Greer Highway 146 Buckner, and conditional use permit, contractor storage on approximately 2.10 acres. The property is located at 4411 West Highway 146 and 3404 Cedar Point Lane, Buckner. The proposed zoning is C3 commercial general business.
All right, thank you. And Mr. McIntyre, I assume you're introducing the docket for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Ms. Session has stated, this application before you is for zoning map amendment, development plan, and conditional use permit for contractor storage. Change will be from R2 residential and C2 commercial to C3 general business district. Here we have the aerial. You can see Cedar Point Lane is on the north side. We have 146 run along the south. Here we have the pavement. You can see, well, this is an outdated graphic right here. The pavement has all been ripped up since. This is an existing house that will be demolished if approved. Here we have the zoning map. So you can see the left parcel, or the westerly parcel is R2, westerly parcel is C2. Again, all in red, the applicant is requesting the Planning Commission recommend approval to C3 to the Oldham County Fiscal Courts. Here we have the future land use map. As Ms. Albee had in her first presentation, the red is the commercial, so future land use map has designated this area as commercial, which falls in line with what the applicant is requesting today. As far as case history, there's 2 neighborhood meetings. The reason for that is the notices did not go out to the second tier adjoining property owners. Therefore, staff required them to hold a second hearing to make sure we reached out to everyone that was affected. So again, neighborhood meeting 1 was June 23rd. Second meeting was July 7th. Technical review committee was held on the 21st of July. The reason they didn't submit in the 8th month of the year was through TRC, we required that they were going to submit for a traffic impact study or traffic impact analysis. Further on in this, in one of the last pages of your packet shows where we will not require them to do that, but that's where that month gap was. The adjoining property owner notices were mailed on the 9th of September. The public notice appeared in Oldham on the same day, and a sign was posted to the property on the 14th of this month, which was 2 weeks ago today. As far as site history, on March 28, 2000, zoning map amendment from R2 to C1 to operate a small mill repair business was recommended for approval to the Oldham County Fiscal Court and was duly approved on May 2nd, 2000. On September 27th, 2011, zoning map amendment from C1 to C2, development plan, a waiver of section 280-150 parking lot layout and design, and a waiver of section 300-050 property perimeter landscape buffer for on-site vehicle repairs recommended for approval to the Oldham County Fiscal Court and was duly approved on November 15th, 2011. The applicant is again requesting a zoning change from R2 and C2 to C3 on approximately 2.10 acres, approval of a development plan and conditional use permit to allow for contractor storage in the C3 general business district. The applicant is requesting the zoning map amendment to allow for the property to be utilized at its highest and best use. The current commercial zoning does not provide an opportunity for the applicant to apply for conditional use for contractor storage. Proposed development plan shows a 15,750 square foot structure with 7 commercial and retail units, around 2,250 square foot each. The building has been designed to allow for overhead doors at the rear of the structure, which face towards Cedar Point Lane, to accommodate storage and movement of contractor equipment and supplies. The development plan shows 3 entrances. One at the front with access to LaGrange Road, which is Highway 146. One at the rear with access to Cedar Point Lane, and a shared access with the easterly adjoining property owner. The plan meets all other zoning and subdivision regulations. And like mentioned before, the Oldham County Fiscal Court and the Transportation Cabinet intend to study Highway 146 in Buckner to incorporate dedicated turn lanes from Cedar Point Road held on July 21st, 2021. And it stated in their justification that the plan complies with the land use, business, and industry goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. Here you have the submitted development plan. So you can see in blue, this is the detention area. There's only one detention area, but it is sizable. And here's the access. There are 3 access points on the site. So again, south side, we have access to 146. North side is Cedar Point Lane. Second access, and then third, we have there's an existing structure over here with I think it's a blacktop lot, but that is the third, and it's a shared access. Here we have the zoning change sign that's posted near a telephone pole along 146, and this was posted 2 weeks ago today. Here we have Cedar Point Lane looking west. If we just move further west, closer to where it's been terminated. Here we are looking on Cedar Point East towards 146 and Buckner. Here we are, again, if you take a look down at the bottom right, you can see where these pictures are taken in the directions oriented towards. So this is, again, back here, Cedar Point Lane. Here's an existing structure. Now I'm standing close to 146 looking into the site. Here we are looking, that would be west towards Buckner Point Storage, which is under construction today. Here we are standing essentially where the lot line is, looking towards Fitz's Frozen Treats. Here we are looking again at that existing structure on the left. Here's the open field. And now we're just looking towards Cedar Point Lane, which these houses on the back are on the north side of. So Cedar Point Lane is right here. Again, just looking into the site, looking north from 146. Here we have the adjoining property. It's finely crafted really. This is where that shared access will be. This is 4409 West Highway 146. Again, here we are in Cedar Point Lane. These are just the properties on the north side as you get closer to Buckner as you're moving east. Here's 3411. It's looking south towards Buckner. We are looking north, or looking, I guess, east towards 393. Here's a south view. Here's 146 is this ridge line right here. And it was taken early in the morning, so it's kind of tough to see with the shadow. And here's just another view looking into the site. So for the proposed binding elements, the approval applies only to the presented at the September 20th, 2021 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. There shall be no changes to the development plan without review of the Oldham County Planning Commission. Preliminary development plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements at the time of the approval. No record plat will be approved until all standards are satisfied. And number 4, a consolidation plat, landscape plan, and lighting plan must be submitted and approved prior to the issuance of any permits. Again, that's for the zoning map amendment and development plan. The conditional use proposed conditions of approval is that the approval applies only to the plan presented at the September 28th, 2021 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. It is important to note that we did just receive, no less than 5 minutes before this hearing, a second letter of opposition. This letter is similar to the letter that is attached to the TRC notes that you all have received in your packet. It has the same letterhead, just has new information, and it is from essentially neighborhood response to the proposed change. So I can put this on the screen if you would, for the record. But just to be clear, there's a letter that's almost identical in your TRC packet. It's just the verbiage is different.
guess my question would be, Tom, is that a letter? It says neighborhood response. Is that from an individual or is that from a neighborhood?
I believe. Yes.
Okay.
I will defer that my response to.
Okay, that's fine. All right, does that complete your presentation?
That's correct.
Mr. Silliman, do you want to come up and provide some additional information for us?
So again, this was reviewed initially at TRC and again here for this meeting. The land disturbing area is greater than 1 acre, so as typical, we would require a stormwater quality management and erosion control permit application be submitted to our office by the applicant. Similarly, because of that disturbance area, the applicant will need to acquire a KYR 10 permit for that construction site from the Division of Water. Notice the landscape buffer area is shared with the Metropolitan Sewer District facilities, so they'll need to coordinate those to make sure that's addressed appropriately. Detention basin calculations and design will be included with construction plan submittal along with the stormwater quality permit to our office. Mr. McIntyre mentioned and showed a picture of the Buckner Point storage facility that's under construction. The applicant will need to make sure that their outlet of their basin, which points in that direction, accommodates the proposed and current construction that's going on there. Let's see. The entrance on 140 Kentucky Highway 146, applicant will need to coordinate with KYTC for a road encroachment permit. We noted in the TRC review a requirement for a TIS traffic impact study. However, as Mr. McIntyre noted, the county is coordinating with the transportation cabinet for more encompassing corridor study connecting Highway 146. So we would include this area in that and waiving that impact study.
Thank you, sir. All right, commissioners, questions for staff?
Speak a little more to that subject to the TIS, and there's an existing condition which is during peak hours, left turn movements into the school campus right there in close proximity to this development site become problematic because it backs up traffic and there's no turning lane. So we are working with the transportation cabinet to hire an engineer to come up with a preliminary line and grade, put a contiguous left turn lane, center turn lane in that area from Cedar Point Road all the way to the new alignment of the Kentucky 393 and 146 intersection. So that's why, again, as Mr. Silliman said and Tom stated, we didn't require a traffic impact statement because we know we're going to.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move into the presentation by the applicant or representatives and others in support of this application. And Ms. Rowland, you have 50 minutes. And if you have anybody that's going to speak, I would assume that we'd like to get them sworn in.
Hello, my name is Kelly Rowan. My address is 6100 Crestwood Station, Crestwood, Kentucky 40014. I am representing Mr. Greer, who's here. And Mike Hill with Land Development and Design will be presenting the development plan for you guys today. Okay?
I should have sworn them in.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Mr. McIntyre did a great job kind of describing the layout of the property, but I just kind of want to go over a couple of things with you guys. As he indicated, the applicant and property owner, Jason Greer, is requesting a change in zoning from R2 residential C2 community business district to C3 general business district with a conditional use permit to allow contractor equipment storage for approximately 2.10 acres of property currently on two separate parcels located at 4411 West Highway 146 and 3404 Cedar Point Lane in Buckner, Kentucky. According to the Oldham County future land use map, the property is slated as appropriate for future commercial development. Currently, the adjoining properties are zoned to the left of the property are zoned I2. There's a cell tower on that property, and then C3, which is where that storage, that mini storage unit's going in. On the opposite side, on the right side of the property, is the real estate business or the real estate office. And then across the street, across 146 in front of the property to the south of the property, those properties are zoned R2 and CO1, and they primarily have single-family residences on them. And then behind the property, to the north of the property, across Cedar Point Lane, again, are residential properties. The proposed rezoning will allow the applicant to construct and locate a 15,750 square foot building with 7 commercial retail units of 2,250 square feet each on the property. The commercial retail units will attract various types of businesses, including restaurants, coffee shops, retail shops, professional offices, and contractor shops to move into the area to provide goods and services to Oldham County residents. In addition, these retail establishments will offer local employment opportunities to Oldham County residents. The property is supported by all necessary utilities. And according to the, the current proposal is in agreement with Oldham County's comprehensive plan and the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan's update, including their applicable goals, objectives, and policies. As evidenced by the future land use map, the existing zoning classification given to the properties at issue is inappropriate, and the proposed zoning classification is appropriate. Specifically, the development supports the following goals and objectives of the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan update. Goal LU1, to provide for planned and orderly growth in order to protect land from premature and unsuitable development. LU1-1, utilize the development review process to ensure that future land uses are compatible with surrounding land use and to protect land from premature or unsuitable development. As previously discussed, the future land use map does indicate the property is suitable for commercial development and no longer suitable for residential development. Goal LU3, to plan for economic development that provides for increased tax revenues with a wide variety of employment opportunities that support the maintenance of a high level community facilities and services and provide job opportunities for future Oldham Countyans. LU3-1, support existing business retention and growth compatible with adjacent uses and availability of community facilities and services. It's hard to miss the opportunity this development provides for future economic growth for the immediate area of Buckner and Oldham County by creating jobs and generating revenue via an increase in property tax. The development, which will attract a variety of different businesses to the area, will create a wide range of employment and wage earning opportunities. Additionally, the provision of the types of services and goods expected to be offered in this location, including a sit-down restaurant, coffee shop, retail shops, professional offices, and contractor shops with storage, will be convenient and helpful and useful to local residents. The location of the development with an additional sit-down restaurant, coffee shop with drive-through window, and other retail shops would likewise be supportive to those people who travel from outside the county for various events at the neighboring school, parks, and athletic fields. Such a development would be an additional opportunity to absorb dollars from traveling customers who may otherwise spend those same dollars outside of Oldham County due to the limited options available to them in the immediate area for those retail goods and services. With regard to the CUP, the proposed use, contractor storage, is a use that is specifically named in the zoning regulation, and it is compatible with surrounding area land uses. Again, we talked about those land uses with the real estate office to the east, the commercial land with the construction of the mini and self-storage units to the west. And then, although there are some residential properties adjacent to the property, they are across public roadways, so they're not immediately adjacent to the property. This, as you will see, this plan will enhance the aesthetics of the property and we will create buffer for light and sounds that will appease the residential, or should appease the residential neighbors. We don't anticipate any odd business hours, so it's anticipated that the business hours would be normal business hours, and there will be multiple entrances to the property. So the Cedar Point Road property will not, or the Cedar Point Road entrance will not be the only entrance available to people to get on the property. Again, the conditional use permit is consistent with economic development goals of the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan, as I discussed above, and with the future land use map. And the property does have adequate infrastructure for the planned development. In sum, we are requesting that the Commission approve the zoning map amendment and the preliminary development plan because they comply with the following objectives and goals of the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan. Goal LU1, Objective LU11, Goal LU3, Objective LU31. And likewise, the future land use map supports our position that the existing zoning classification given to the property is inappropriate and the proposed zoning is appropriate. We also ask that the conditional use permit be granted because it's consistent with the objectives and goals of the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan as discussed, and because granting the conditional use permit will allow the proper integration in the community of a use specifically named in the zoning regulation. The character and objectives of the proposed use and the potential impacts on the community and its surroundings are appropriate. There are potential benefits to the community. The proposed use is compatible with surrounding land use and the general character of the area, and there are adequate public facilities available to the property. Now I'm going to let Mike Hill with Land Design Development present the plan for you guys. I'll be available for you.
Thank you. Hello, Commissioners. Mike Hill. I'm a land planner with Land Design and Development, 503 Washburn Avenue, Louisville, 40222. As mentioned by Tom and Kelly, this is the future land use plan from the comprehensive plan. Our site is highlighted in yellow. The red area is the commercial future land use area. So you see we're surrounded on the east and the west as well as the south. Well, I guess you could say southeast across the 146 by commercial future land use. Behind us, you see some single-family residential, as well as a lot of recreational and open space. That's the Oldham County soccer fields. Y'all are familiar with that. It's basically right behind our site on the other side of Cedar Point Lane. Part of it is located there. This is the zoning map. Again, we've got two parcels that make up our site. The western parcel is R2 residential, and the eastern parcel is C2 commercial. Right now, there is a residence on the R2 parcel, and there is a couple different commercial uses that take place on the C2 portion. There's an ice cream stand, I think that was mentioned, Fitz's Freeze. They also do a fireworks stand at the appropriate time of year. So those are the two properties that make up the proposed site that we're proposing to change to C3, as mentioned. Again, we're adjacent on the west to C3 and I2, on the east to C1, and then we've got residential on kind of front and back on the other side of both abutting roadways. This is the aerial of the site. Again, you can see the blue roof. That's the house I mentioned, and then the gravel parking lot area you see on the eastern portion of our site. That's the ice cream stand. So this is where we're located. Got a cell tower just to the left of us. The storage unit development is not shown on this aerial, but just south of that cell tower, just west of our site, is a current project under construction for mini storage. Behind us, you see a row of residential homes along Cedar Point Lane, which I'll talk about how we are proposing to mitigate any perceived negative impacts on them. Talk about that in a minute. Then you can see the soccer fields there behind us. Then this is our proposal overlaid on the aerial photo. We have one large building. It's approximately 15,000 square feet plus. It's proposed to be divided into up to as many as 7 internal units, which would be 2,250 square feet each. The mixture of uses in those, it's not exactly known at this time. Mr. Greer doesn't know exactly what kind of businesses are going in this proposal. So we've come up with a mixture of land uses that we show on a development plan that we think will be approximately 2 units might be small scale restaurant or carry out type restaurant uses. On the ends that you see on the development plan, you have a drive-through located on each end of the building. Those could accommodate those type uses. Then the interior units, we anticipate two of those to possibly be retail or office type uses, and then up to 3 of those to possibly be small contractor shop type uses. On the back of the building, we've set it up with maneuvering space to the rear of the building so that there could be potentially overhead garage door access if the particular tenants desire that. I'll show you a picture of what that conceptually would look like in a minute. So as far as our access, we have 3 access points into the site. The main access right here off of 146, which is a Kentucky state highway. We've talked with the transportation cabinet, and they've given preliminary approval of the location of this during construction plan review for our encroachment permit to determine exactly what the dimensions and details of that access point look like. The rear access is on Cedar Point Lane, which is a county public roadway. And then we'll have a shared access agreement with the adjacent real estate office next door, which also is owned by this applicant, which has its own existing access out to 146 in this location. We're proposing 53 parking spaces, which is compliant with the zoning ordinance for our mixture of land uses that we're showing on our development plan. As far as stormwater, we are proposing, might show better on this plan, we are showing a system that will capture all the stormwater created from the new rooftop and the new pavement within a series of catch basins and pipes in the parking lot that'll lead towards the low spot of the property, which is shown here with this detention basin. And then once that water is detained, it will be released at the same or lesser rate than stormwater currently leaves the property in the same location, heading toward the west. As Mr. Silliman mentioned, that is where we will work with his office to determine exactly how the water will leave our site and be appropriately handled as it moves on down the watershed. We've had discussions with him, and once we're working on construction plans that are much more detailed than what we're at this stage, we'll certainly work to make sure that that is designed appropriately and functions effectively for everybody involved. The landscaping you see on the plan is conceptual. It's what we believe is required by the zoning ordinance. Across the front of the property, you see a vehicular use area landscape buffer across the entire row of our parking field. So there's a 10-foot landscape buffer there with trees and shrubs planted there to help screen our cars and the maneuvering and headlights from the adjacent residential properties on the other side of 146. There's also interior landscape islands with required trees shown throughout the parking lot. Across the back, there's also a required 10-foot landscape buffer across our frontage. Where we have heard concerns from the residential neighbors who live behind us, we have decided to beef up the landscaping along this strip here. So from the entrance to the property line along the back, we're proposing a double row of staggered evergreen plantings. And I'll show you a picture of conceptually what that will look like to help mitigate the sight, the sound, lights, any kind of nuisance items that they might potentially experience in the future. Our plan does not require any variances or waivers. We've designed a layout that complies with all zoning ordinance applicable sections. We do have a dumpster shown in this location here. We located it as far away from the residential properties as possible. It will be entirely enclosed and gated, except when it's being emptied. Our new access options that we're creating provide 3 ways into and out of our site. So if one was worried that all of the traffic would be exiting or entering through the rear on Cedar Point Lane, that's not necessarily the case. Primary access point is on 146 here, as well as the shared access here. There will be cars and vehicles utilizing the rear access in and out, but it's not 100% of the site, and it's certainly not designed to have significant traffic flow in that location. As far as what it's going to look like, this is architect's rendering of the front of the building across the top, the long view of the building. That's the view from 146. You can see 7 different doors, different human-sized doors there. So indicates that up to 7 units could be placed in this building. It could be less, depending on what kind of businesses contact Mr. Greer about leasing space. So the top shows a mixture of materials, a stucco type material. There's some metal, there's some brick, there's some block, a lot of glass windows. And then the lower image is the side. It's what both sides of the building would look like, but there's not a drive-through window shown. You can envision a drive-through or pickup window shown on the sides of the building. That is the facade of the drive-through on the ends. It's similar materials, kind of an EFIS type stucco material, some metal, some block. Then we didn't have a rendering of the rear, but we found examples of exactly what he is envisioning. So we included a picture of that. If the tenants prefer to have an overhead garage door in the rear, this is something like what the backs of these units might look like. They would have a service entry door as well as a overhead garage door that would allow for vehicles to move in and out, and park vehicles and storage of items inside the rear. Not all of the prospective tenants probably will want these, but it's set up and we laid it out as such so that there's maneuvering behind the building to be able to get in and out of this type of overhead door space. And those wouldn't be on the end units where the drive-through businesses are targeted for, so these would be only in the interior units. The screening along the rear, this is something of what we envision. We want to provide a visual buffer for the residential neighbors that are affected most by our proposal. So along the rear on Cedar Point Lane, this is our concept that we're proposing. It's a double row of evergreen screening. Could be arborvitae or something similar to that. That would look similar to this along the rear, if planted in such a way as shown in the exhibit. After a few years and some maturity, it would create a nice dense wall that would block out any headlights, any activity behind the building. It would hopefully knock out some of the sound as well. So this is what we're thinking in the rear in response to some of the concerns we've heard from the neighbors behind our property. I think that sums up our proposal at this point. Happy to, at the appropriate time, come back up and respond to any questions or comments.
Mr. Hill, thank you. Ms. Raylan, does that complete your presentation? Okay. All right. With that, is there anyone here that'd like to speak in support of this application? In support or opposition? Okay, that'll come in just a second. So, anyone here to speak in support of? Okay, I don't see anyone. So at this point, now we'll move into testimony and question by those opposing the application. So that would be you two, sir. Yeah.
Before you begin, I'd like to get you sworn in by Ms. Hashu.
I only swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, ma'am.
And we just need your name and address for the record.
Ruth Roberts, 3411 Cedar Point Road. We're right behind the property that we're discussing. Our problem is, one, the amount of traffic that's going to be dumped out onto Cedar Point. We were given to understand the road was cut off initially because that intersection is so dangerous. And now we're going to dump people from coffee shops, customers, employees, construction equipment, and semis up there to come out at that intersection. Not to mention the amount of traffic from the schools in the morning and the afternoon where you can't even get in and out, not to go east. Our suggestion there is where it was currently cut off, our portion of Cedar Point, open that back up, cut it right at the eastern edge of the Department of Corrections property. That would allow the access from their development out the back, and it would funnel them out Cedar Point Road to the new Cedar Point out onto 146. Farther away from the schools, farther away from the daycare center that all of this is going to be right in front of. And you have one good accident with kids in the car and you're going to have a real problem. Another issue is, yes, you can put up those bushes to block the massive number of dumpsters that are going to be back there and the construction equipment. In 10 years, they'll be big enough to block it. And it's not going to be one dumpster. Everybody will have a dumpster. And there'll be stuff piled up around them. And you go behind any building, any one of these strip buildings, and look, and they've all got 6 or 8 dumpsters and all kinds of junk piled up around them. I don't want that in my front door. Put up a wall. Put up a sound barrier wall, a sight barrier wall. One more concern is that retention pond. If it doesn't work as it's supposed to, with evaporation and absorption, who's going to deal with the mosquito issues? And all the disease that they carry?
Thank you. All right. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to bring up a couple extra points.
One, your address is the same.
Morris Roberts, 3411 Cedar Point Road.
Yes, sir.
One thing we were saying that they might have drive-throughs on each end of the building. So that automatically throws autos back out on the little Cedar Point lane. That's why we came up with the suggestion of trying to move the road and reopen, because all those homes through the Cedar Point lane through the subdivision, they all face the rear of the houses. Just a straight shot down that road. The new Cedar Point Road, turn left to the, like she said, to a more viable exit from that, doing that. We're not opposed against the businesses or anything. We're just saying we think we found an alternative to get rid of the traffic easier.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. I assume that concludes your all's presentation at this point. Okay. Before I open it up for questions from the commission, I'd like to get Mr. Urban to maybe address the Cedar Point reopening possibility or what.
Ms. Roberts, I always appreciate creative thinking and trying to come up with a solution, but I mentioned earlier that we were going to study and put in turn lane on 146. And when we do that, and, I've lived in Buckner for 22 years, that intersection I know, and I know the whole history of why we moved it and everything is still problematic. And we've been talking about making that a better, safer intersection. And I think this study will look at that. Well, we'll be probably ahead of their development plan, I believe, because their process still goes to fiscal court, and we're, getting pretty close to hiring a consultant.
Coincide with their building, it would be 5 years down the road.
It would coincide with their building, correct? So, again, I want to assure the planning commission members, especially, that we are looking at that intersection. And I have worked with Mr. Greer, had quite a few conversations. At one point, we were talking about, well, could we just eliminate that and bring a street through his property? It would take too much right of way from their property. So I think we're going to really address this issue when we do the study on 146. Okay. Yeah, you'll have an opportunity to bring some more questions up here. So it's okay, but you're fine. You're fine. Good question, but we don't know what the cost is, and opening up Cedar Point Lane creates additional issues. I'm not sure that that's not a possibility, but we would have to close that intersection at Cedar Point Lane and 146 because we don't want traffic cutting all the way through there like it was in the past. And so, that we'll study all that during our analysis of the turn lanes. All right, commissioners, questions for either the applicant or the Roberts? Any questions? Mr. Douglas.
Either for their designer or this Roland, one of the two. My question is that, was there discussion not to open or have an exit onto Cedar Point Road? You have two entrances.
We do. Yes, when we laid out the site from the very beginning, we looked at a variety of different options. And the fact that we were abutting a public roadway just made sense to provide additional connectivity for the area. I think if we did not have that access on Cedar Point Lane, and everybody had to leave for 146, it might make problems worse on 146. So I think by spreading out the options to enter and exit the site, we're improving the overall traffic in the area.
On your preliminary plan, it shows potential of 2 drive-throughs on either end of the building, correct?
One drive-through unit on each end of the building, as shown on the development.
In between, I guess, one of the areas is 15 feet. On the one on the, I guess the building and the property line is 15 feet.
Right between the building and the property line?
You have 15 feet as setback in between the property line and the building. And my question is that wide enough for a vehicle to turn into there?
That is the corner of the building to the edge of the pavement, not to the property line. Right. Yes. Yeah. That
Wide enough for somebody to make that radius?
15 feet could accommodate that.
I'm not a truck driver, but
confusion about semis. I don't know why anybody would assume that
come back up a little bit closer, Ms. Round, please.
we're not envisioning semis on our property at all. In fact,
You testify that there's a potential of a coffee shop or restaurant, correct?
Okay.
Be made.
Okay, I get you. That's
Yeah, there are options for maneuvering in and out of the site using all three entrances for a variety of truck sizes. We did truck routines on the layout that show you can access through 146. You can access through Cedar Point Lane. You can turn around behind the building and exit back out through 146. There are ways to get around the building.
In one of your photographs, you indicated that if there are storage doors in the back of the building,
Potential for yes, for that.
will there be parking? I mean, are they going to park in front of the storage doors?
Directly behind the building, no. There are parking spots on On this side over here, there's some parallel parking spots along the very back, but this area, it's set up for no striped parking directly behind the building. Could a truck like in this picture park like that in front of their door at their unit? Sure, they could do that, but there's room to do so.
Answer your question, Mr. Douglas? Okay. All right. I had a couple of questions here real quick. Sure. Come on up, Mr. Greer. Let me get your name and address.
I'm sorry, Jason Greer, 1700 Granvilla Drive, LaGrange, Kentucky. We consider the parking issue with some box trucks and that type of thing. You know, I have other commercial properties. What we'll have to do on that, because not only for the residents around, but also just as the tenants that's going to be in the property, we're going to have to limit how many parking spots each tenant gets as a designated spot, just like an apartment complex or something like that. So, you know, based on what goes in there, we're gonna decide, okay, if this contractor needs 4 spots, is that applicable for what he needs, or is it 6? You know, so we're not expecting to have a whole bunch of box trucks or vans there. We're gonna limit that per tenant. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, I'm a heating air company and I have 15 vans, it's just not going to work. They would have to park those off site or something like that. We're anticipating, like a small flooring company that has a little showroom up front and then maybe some storage back where they come, they load the van up with their supplies and go to the job site for the day. They're not going to be, coming and going a lot. It's mainly going to be more retail up front and just a little bit of space in the back. We spoke to someone that was doing woodworking. He wanted to have a showroom up front and then have some, different type of equipment in the back that he can pull and unload the truck and put some wood stuff in there and do the woodwork in the back of the shop, but also display it on the front for retail. So, but we have looked at that and considered the whole, how many vans or box trucks would be allowed there. And that's something that I will limit it just because we can't have that for the other tenants that's going to be at the property as well. So, okay.
All right. I have a couple questions. I guess, Mr. Hill, would you put the front display or front of the building back up? Yes. I notice on the parapets there or whatever, as far as are those white areas, are those going to be signage for the buildings? And I guess if that's the case, do they meet our sign regulations?
That conceptual drawing there, those rectangles are intended to be the location where the sign for each building would be located, and yes, they will comply with the zoning ordinance.
Okay, and is that the only location on the property that you anticipate signs? Well, I need to get you back up so we can get it on the record, sir.
I do not want to do any type of street sign or something like that, like some retail centers have where there's multiple signs there. That's my idea would be is actually to have a little bit bigger frontage on the building and not have anything out closer to the road where there's a pole sign. And that way the tenant can still have the exposure, but yet we don't have to have the pole sign.
And then on the materials on the front, is that all glass where those doors are? Is that all glass front? Okay.
Yes.
What do you anticipate the other part of the materials being, on the building?
We're hoping to do like a mixture of materials, like a hardy. We want to have separation between each unit and have some different elevation, as you can see on the front elevation, just to give it a more contemporary look and try to dress it up instead of just a big flat elevation where it looks like more of a, I don't want to say a generic, I wanted to give it some more depth and stuff like that as well. So that's why we did it like that. But we are going to use different type of materials or the same type of material, but different look of, it might be a different color just to give some separation.
Okay. And one other question, and Jim might want to jump in on this, the proposed binding elements that we would consider. You talked about your landscaping. I think what you all outlined, especially in the back along Cedar Point, probably is over and above what is required in the county. I guess we want a little bit more detail, what size of the arborvitae or whatever it is you're proposing to put in, what are you looking at? It looked pretty nice on the pictures, but I know when you first planted, it's not going to be that large.
They were about 6 to 8 foot is what we would try to, initially start with. Obviously, arborvitaes, they grow pretty fast. So once they grow, not only vertical, horizontal, they kind of mesh together and it can, create a pretty good wall there.
If we did approve this, then you all would be willing as a binding element to go above and beyond basically the landscaping requirements.
Yes.
Jim, anything else?
Just to satisfy some of the residents that were complaining about we heard mostly a noise concern, like she had mentioned the garbage trucks. We are only going to have one dumpster. She mentioned multiple dumpsters. It will be off to we try to go to the west side of that, try to keep it away from the residents. It's going to be closer to the self-storage of Dan's. And the residents that I have a tenant at the house now, he has a garbage can. So the dumpsters come down, unload that, turn around in his small driveway and leave out. We anticipate that the dumpster's probably going to come in, dump the trash, and probably go back on out towards 146 at one of the other entrances. I don't see that being a real big issue, but we are only going to have one dumpster at the site.
Thank you, Mr. Greer. All right, commissioners, any additional questions? Any additional questions for either the applicant or the folks at Roberts that testified in opposition? Ms. Jones?
So the other tenants tenants will not be allowed to have their own dumpster or additional dumpsters behind their units?
No, ma'am. It'll be just one dumpster that will probably have to use some type of compactor or something, similar to like apartments and stuff use. It'll just be centrally located and everybody can use that same dumpster. And we'll have to do that based on what they recommend the size to be once we have some tenants.
Okay, so that'll be in their lease agreement that they are not allowed to add additional.
That is correct. Yes. They will not. There will only be one dumpster on the premises. And we also did that not only for reasons, as far as trying to keep it clean, but also, we're limited to in the back there for those garage doors and stuff like that. If we start having dumpsters there, then that's going to not allow everybody to have access to those garage doors if needed.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Mr.
You shouldn't keep going back in that seat because we're keeping sit in front. Two things. Are you going to have any restrictions about outside storage? This is in relation to their consideration of a conditional use permit for the contractor. If they choose to consider approving it, we would place a binding element that says no outside storage.
Meaning like sheds or
no material or pallets or anything.
That would have to be considered, I guess on a long-term, no, we wouldn't allow that, but we can do that as a binding element if you like. I don't anticipate anybody storing anything like that. I try to keep the properties clean and nice, and I'm sure the other tenants there wouldn't want to see that as well. So.
And would you consider putting signs on the Cedar Point Lane axis that says no truck traffic? At least a truck that goes in there wouldn't be inclined to go out on Cedar Point Lane because it says no trucks.
And you're saying on the rear axis, on the rear, and yes. And we don't anticipate semi trucks. I can see a box truck or some type of utility van or something like that. But, if they come in there, they're only going to do it once because they're going to realize it's going to be a problem getting in and out.
Signs there, it says no truck access. That would curtail them from even thinking about going that way.
Anything else, Mr. Robert? Okay. Any additional questions before we move on? Oh, Mr. Douglas.
Get this on record then. You don't anticipate semis coming in there, but you mentioned earlier that you're hoping or your potential tenant could be someone who does flooring. So how does that get delivered to them?
Trucks. I mean, if you look, most, you're a small business like a flooring company is not going to have the warehouse space to be able to store a semi truck. It's, most of your distributors in the area, whether it's, flooring, lighting company, something like that, are mainly going to do box trucks or some type of a sprinter van or something like that to do deliveries. Most of the time when you see the big semis, they're going to have a loading dock. It's going to be more transportation from a longer distance than just a short run from downtown Louisville to supply them for the week or the month, however often they get those deliveries.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions? Right. Seeing none, we'll now move into rebuttal evidence and cross-examination by the applicant. Ms. Rowland?
I don't think I have a whole lot here. I just wanted to, I think some of the things that they mentioned in their objection to the property or to the plan was addressed in your questions, particularly the semi trucks and things like that. But also there are, just so that we're clear, you can go all the way around the building. So if you go through the drive-through, you can go out around the other side. You don't have to go out that Cedar Point Road exit, okay? She had mentioned, in addition to semis, construction equipment. I don't know if she's talking about construction equipment when they're actually building the site, or if she was talking about construction, if she was envisioning construction equipment coming in and out of the facility. But like we said, or like Jason said earlier, we're only anticipating box trucks or smaller work trucks, things like that, to come in and out. And it would be probably very limited trips. It would probably be loading up in the morning, going out for the day, coming back and loading up maybe in the afternoon and going back out for the afternoon runs. So I don't know if you wanted to clarify that, if you were talking about.
Have an opportunity here in just a minute to come up and do in further up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Rowland, is there anything else that you have on that? Okay. Ms. Roberts, do you want to come back up and you have an opportunity for rebuttal evidence and cross-examination at this point?
First, I need to clarify that my statement about opening Cedar Point, I think part of that got lost. I said reopen Cedar Point where it was closed. Close it at the eastern edge of the soccer property. So no, it won't be a through road. It'll only go in as far as the soccer property. It'll only go in to right before their proposed exit. And then it'll go out the other way where it's a straight stretch, no houses facing it, and onto a road with better access to 146. Now, the construction equipment I was talking about, you're saying storage of construction equipment or contractor's equipment. That's not a box truck or a van. Contractor equipment is equipment, not a truck, not a little truck. And if you go into any or almost any of these developments where there's several businesses, you will see semis unloading an order of flooring. You'll see semis unloading at fast food restaurants. None of these places have loading docks or big warehouses, but you still get semis in there, and they've got to get out some way. And they're not going to go around the building and out onto 146. They're going to go out Cedar Point. Thank you.
Mr. Roberts, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Okay. All right, with that, before you sit back down, Ms. Roberts, is there any final statement you'd like to make? Is that okay? All right. With that, Ms. Rowland? Oh, I'm sorry. Come on back. Oh, need you to come back up if you could.
Appreciate them trying to come up with a solution with the sound barrier for the people on Cedar Point Lane, live behind what they're going to construct. Toward that. Like I said, all we're working toward, we know we don't want them to have the business, but we just want to make it applicable for everybody. Both ways of everything.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, Ms. Rowland, do you have a final statement?
Sir, I would just like to say that the plan as proposed does meet all of the requirements in the code or in the comprehensive plan, and it is supported by the comprehensive plan. As I discussed earlier, therefore, we are requesting that you approve the zoning change and approve the plan as well as the conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, docket PZ 21021 and PZ 21022 are closed. And we will consider the zoning map amendment first. And this will be a recommendation to the Oldham County Fiscal Court for the potential zoning change. And I'll call on Mr. Urban to outline what's being requested under this.
Okay. Yeah, it's the first thing is whether or not it's appropriate zoning map amendment and a recommendation to fiscal court. You have on page 3 in your staff report potential motions for either approval or denial. You've been giving justification by the applicant, which you can rely on if you care to, in terms of the compliance with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map.
Okay. And then we will consider the proposed binding elements under the development plan portion. Commissioners, you've heard what's being requested here under the docket PZ 21021 zoning map amendment to C3 Commercial General Business District, and that would be a recommendation to Oldham County Fiscal Court. So at this point, the chair would entertain a motion on the proposed zoning change.
I make the motion.
Davis? Okay.
I make the motion. We approve the proposed zoning for PZ-21-021 and 22 to C3 zoning based on it meets the comprehensive plan. And also there's many places around the proposed zoning change that has commercial property there already.
Okay. Mr. Carter, is that adequate? Okay. I have an adequate motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Okay, Sam Finney seconds. All right, and now any discussion on the motion to approve the zoning zoning map amendment request on docket PZ 21021? Any discussion? Mr. Douglas.
Clarify this as a recommendation to Oldham County Fiscal Court for approval.
This is will be a recommendation from the Planning Commission to Oldham Fiscal Court, correct? All right, any further discussion? All right, we'll go ahead and Ms. Haichu, if you will take the vote, please. This is a motion to approve the zoning request. We'll go to Oldham County Fiscal Court.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas? Mr. Elder? Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton? Mr. King? Mr. Klingenfuss? Ms. Nasser? Mr. Smith? Ms. Jones?
Yes.
All right, on docket PZ 21021, the zoning map amendment request that will go to Oldham Fiscal Court has been approved on a vote of 11-0. All right, at this point, we will now consider development plan with the attached binding elements, and Mr. Urban will outline those at this point.
Could fiscal court support your recommendation to change the zoning map amendment? Your next decision is regarding preliminary development plan. Page 3, there's a sample motion for either approval or denial. If you choose to approve it, there are additional binding elements. I'm going to ask the applicant to make sure and pay attention because I've added a couple, but we have talked about them.
The first is that the approval applies only to the plan presented at the September 28, 2021 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. Second is there shall be no changes to the development plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission. The third is that the preliminary development plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements at the time of approval, and no record plat will be approved until all standards are satisfied. There won't necessarily be a record plat on this one. A consolidation plat, landscape plan, and lighting plan must be submitted and approved prior to issuance of any building permits. Number 5, applicant is required to place a double row of 6 to 8 foot evergreen shrubs as presented during the hearing along the Cedar Point Lane entrance. Number 6 is that no freestanding sign as presented in the testimony, that there be no freestanding sign as presented in testimony. And then number 7 is that signs restricting truck traffic onto Cedar Point Lane be placed at the rear entrance.
Mr. Allen, are you all okay with that? If I could get you to come back up just so we get on the record, please.
Yes, we are.
All right, commissioners, you heard the proposal on the development plan on docket PC 21022 with the outlined binding elements that have been agreed to by the applicant. The chair will now entertain a motion on this docket on the development plan. We have a motion on the development plan. Mr. Elder.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve docket PC 21022, the preliminary plan, because it complies with the objectives of the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, and the subdivision regulations. And I would include the restrictions as outlined by Jim.
Elements is outlined. Okay. Mr. Carter, is that adequate? Okay. Do we have a second? Ms. Davis seconds. All right. Commissioners, are there any discussion on the motion to approve the development plan on docket PC 21022? Any discussion? All right, I see no hands going up, so Ms. Highshoe, if you would, we'll take the vote on the motion to approve the development plan.
Ms. Jones? Mr. Smith? Nasser? Mr. Klingenfuss? Mr. King? Mr. Hampton? Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Falvey? Mr. Elder? Douglas? Ms. Davis?
All right, the motion to approve the development plan with the attached binding elements on docket PZ 21022 has been approved on a vote of 11-0. And with that, before we adjourn, one more conditional. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yep, I missed that.
Ken has asked that we consider a conditional use permit to allow contractor storage in a C3 general business district. It's not a permitted use, so that's why we have it as a conditional use in that zoning classification. Again, there are actually 2 binding elements. The first is the approval applies only to the plan presented at September 28, 2021 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. And then I asked the question, and I'm going to propose it as a binding element, that no outside storage of equipment or material be allowed.
Mr. Allen, do you accept those binding elements?
I want to clarify that that doesn't mean that they can't park trucks there. It just means all,
With that clarification, we agree.
Okay. All right. So we would now entertain a motion on the what's the term? Conditional use. Conditional use. Sorry. Conditional use. Mr. King.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the conditional use permit as requested. Based on testimony and evidence presented, I find that the character and objectives of the proposed use, potential impact, are appropriate, and that the proposed use is compatible with surrounding land uses and the general character of the area.
With the attached binding elements.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Carter, adequate? Okay. All right. Do we have a second? Okay. Mr. Falvey seconds. Any discussion on the motion to approve the conditional use requested? Mr. Finney?
Just, just a clarification on the need for this?
Again, contractor space like this is a conditional use in that zoning classification. It isn't a permitted use. So they've requested a conditional use in the event that they do have people that want to, like you heard in the testimony, they have a retail storefront, allow storage of their materials, like flooring or whatever type of business, and have those garage doors in the back to be able to use it.
It's because of the zoning.
Zoning classification, that's correct. If you look at permitted uses in the C3, it doesn't allow these, but it allows them as a conditional use.
Okay.
We have done these in the past. So storage on 329, put some contractor storage in there. They asked for it to go to place. They asked for conditional use.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, proceed to vote here on this is a motion to approve the conditional use request with the proposed binding elements.
Ms. Davis? Bliss? Mr. Oler? Elby? Mr. Finney? Mr. Hampton? Mr. King? Mr. Klingenfuss? Ms. Nasser? Mr. Smith? Ms. Jones?
All right, the proposed binding element, conditional use has been approved on a vote of 11-0. This is on docket PZ 21022. Thank you all. And with that, call on Ms. Albee as always to let us know what we're looking at for next month.
Filing deadline is tomorrow. We do anticipate obviously having the meeting in October. Wright Heights has not submitted any updated plans at this point, but we do anticipate other applications in case they defer another month. But most likely, 99.9% sure we will have a hearing next month.
Okay. Anything?
And updated training hours and the link to the training website where you can pick videos. Just email me back the day and the video name that you watched, and I will add it to your training records.
Anything else, Mr. Urban? Okay, folks, we about 12:30 here, after 12:30. So thank you all, and we will stand adjourned.